I'll call the meeting to order. This is the November 15, 2016 meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission of the Town of Fairfield. First item on our agenda is the meeting minutes from October 25th, 2016.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner Alessi,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner McAleese. Does everybody have a copy of those? Yeah. I reviewed it. I didn't see any changes or corrections.
We're fine, right?
Anybody have any other questions for staff, comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is 75 Senior Place, request of attorney Christopher Russo for a 90-day extension for filing a funded subdivision map.
This matter has been withdrawn, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
It's okay. This matter's been withdrawn, Mr. Chairman.
Withdrawn.
Okay.
Okay, 75 Senior Place has been withdrawn. Next item is 130 Fairchild Avenue, request of Garden Homes Management for 100% release of a $31,528 bond pertaining to a zoning compliance for site improvements in Zone B.
This was, as you know, an 8-30G application for 52 units. This development is complete. It's been occupied for close to 2 years. Your packet includes a report from our engineering department reporting that all bonded improvements have been completed to their satisfaction. We're therefore recommending the release of the bond.
Very good. Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Noonan. Thank you. So we have the report from Laura Pooley in our file recommending 100% release.
Seems pretty cut and dry.
Cut and dry.
Yeah.
Any questions for staff, comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The bond release is approved unanimously. Next item is 2160, 2180 Kings Highway, request of attorney Diane Lord for 100% release of a $37,820 bond pertaining to special permit improvements in the Design Residential District.
This is a condominium development that's adjacent to Bed Bath & Beyond on Kings Highway. And once again, your packet includes the report from the engineering department that all bonded improvements have been completed to their satisfaction, and we're therefore recommending release.
Great. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi,
Second.
second by Commissioner McAleese. Anybody have any questions? Comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Bond release is approved unanimously. Next item are new applications to recommend a public hearing. First is 332, 360 Meadow Street, special exception and special permit application of Country Realty Company pertaining to the construction of an automobile service facility in the Design Commercial District.
This property, just to let you know, is on the corner of Meadow Street and New England Avenue. There was a house that was demolished several years ago. They've been parking cars on it for a while. New Country Lexus is looking to establish another automobile service facility on this property. Requires a public hearing.
Right, special exception. Very good, thank you.
I'll make a motion moving about public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Alessi,
Second.
second by Commissioner McAleese. The public hearing is required. Any further comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Move to public hearing unanimously. Next item is old business, Plan of Conservation and Development Update. Proposal of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to update the Plan of Conservation and Development.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any comments beyond what we sent to you with the email agenda. We provided a November update draft to respond to some of the comments that we had received post-hearing and updated 5 or 6 pages. As you know, there are some other elements from comments that we think can better be addressed in the later chapters. There are certainly comments that have merit, but we think are better placed in the later sections. I can go into more detail if anybody wants me to at this point, but for now, that's what I have.
Very good. Yeah, we've had this on the table now for a few meetings. I think we all know where we stand. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner McAleese. Thank you.
After going back and forth on this for months on end, and additions and revisions, I finally feel we are now at a place where we can vote on it, and I am going to recommend that we approve this.
Thank you. Commissioner McAleese, any comments?
Nothing to add to that. We've really kind of beat this one. We've had some changes put in that we all wanted, and I'm happy with it the way it is.
Yeah, good. Commissioner
So,
Corcoran?
since we're still working on the entire plan, can we come back and amend this part of it?
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, yes. So, I'm excited. I'm happy that we're finally here and to approve what we can call an interim update, but nonetheless is an approved update to our master plan. We have a lot of good stuff in the hopper from additional comments that I think will serve us well in revising other sections. Once this is approved, as we've discussed and put out in the public, our plan is to hold additional public hearings and roundtables, charrettes with the different for the different neighborhoods and the different sections in the master plan, and that's going to be a process that is going to take some time. If we think about a number of residential areas and districts in our town and the different components of the master plan, this is going to take probably 12 to 16 months, and is a major initiative that we're going to embark on to really update the other sections of the master plan. So in doing that, yes, it should be clear that we should continue to make comments and tweaks and updates to these sections that we're now approving today. Mr. Barrett?
I support approving this tonight. I think, a word of caution, just to see how this went, we had a lot of work done outside, and it was brought in as a very valuable part of the document. Then we got some public input and some commissioners' input, and we added things about the beaches and the school enrollment and open space, and a lot of good stuff was added to this. And that took a while. And that took, without having a separate meeting. And again, that was I'm not saying it was the easy part, it's a very valuable part of the document. This next part that the chairman is talking about with 12 to 16 months, we're going to need some dedicated planning meetings to that, and it's going to have to be part of our schedule. And when we get, like we've seen recently, multi-night applications, that, we get complex applications beyond our control, it'll take a while. So it's going to take some diligence and some extra scheduling to get this done. And I agree with Mr. Corcoran. I mean, I think this is it's not a draft, it'll be, if we approve this is the new POCD as of November 2016, and then anything after that, while we have that, I don't think there's any limit that we can't go back and add to Section 3, or go back and add something to a Section 1 if you feel that it's more appropriate there. So I strongly support this tonight, getting this done, getting this approved, but then, making time next year to make sure that we get the rest of it done, which is that's the harder part.
Following up on that,
Yeah.
similar to how you periodically will make changes to the zoning regulations, adopting this tonight certainly is not the end of the story, as you all say. You can make amendments to this as you see fit, just like you do with zoning regulations from time to time. So,
Right. Very good. Anybody else have any other comments, questions? You ready to vote? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The update to the master plan is approved unanimously. Next item is 523 Morehouse Highway, re-subdivision application of Joseph Lagana Builders and Joseph Grasso for 2 lots in an R3 zone.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to give you a brief review, this has been at two hearings. There were some referrals requested. I'll just go really quick what is proposed here. It's a subject property is 50,275 square feet, parcel located on the west side of Morehouse Highway, across the street from Coach Lane. The site currently contains an existing house, detached garage, asphalt driveway, and several walkways. The site is served by public water and municipal sanitary sewer. The owner proposes to subdivide the property into 2 residential lots and construct a single-family, 2.5-story dwellings with driveways on each individual lot. And needless to say, the existing house, detached garage, and driveways will be removed. Now, we had the hearing, we had referrals to our different departments. One went to engineering, and we did get a final report back from the town engineer, essentially saying that the plans, including the drainage system, was acceptable to the department. We also did do a referral to the tree warden, and this was what prompted some additional requests for information. Essentially, his initial report was that he found that 2 large maples, approximately 24 to 30 inches in diameter, had been removed. The maples were in the town right-of-way and removed without a permit, without the tree warden's permission. He is requesting at a minimum that 2 maples be replaced with 2 new maples not less than 6 to 7 inch in caliper. Approximate cost of each tree is around $900. These trees will have to be set back from the road so they are not directly under the utility lines, and he's also requesting 4 flowering trees be installed along the right-of-way, spaced out every 30 feet. The additional information requested was the commission wanted to know if he could comment on the conditions of the trees that were removed. He did report that he did not believe the trees created a line of sight issue, which was discussed at the hearing. As far as overall health, he believed that the trees were in good condition. He had no prior work orders or residential requests for work or inspection of the trees. And he felt if the builders did file for a permit to remove the trees, that he would have denied that. He did not feel that the trees, based on the information he had, warranted removal. That's the most recent updated information we have.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, and I saw the report from the tree warden as well, and I've got a few additional questions, and frankly, there is some additional information that I would want, that I'd like to talk about. So I would entertain a motion to table this item one more time for a discussion.
I'll make a motion to table this.
Motion to table by Commissioner Alessi.
I'll second it. I assume I'm making this motion so that we vote to table it, but we just talk about why we're
Correct.
tabling it.
But that's
Table for the
correct.
purpose of discussion.
Yep.
That's fine. I second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Barretts. I would like to know what the value of this tree is. I have a significant issue with the applicant here simply cutting down a town tree, which is a mature 30 to 40 inch maple that some estimated at the last public hearing was 50 years old. In the ordinary course, if there is a tree in the right-of-way that the applicant contended presented an issue for lines of sight, well, then they talk to the tree warden to see whether or not that is available for removal. And in some cases, that might be entirely appropriate. We have a lot of trees in town which need to be removed, replaced, trimmed, etc. So the piece of information that was critical for me to get back from the tree warden in this step was whether this tree was in that camp, maybe possibly, no harm, no foul. That's not the case. Tree warden has confirmed that if this came before him on an application for a permit to remove the tree, he would have denied it, that it was a healthy tree. And also, if there is this issue in the right-of-way with a tree, whatever, then the applicant looks to see maybe they can place the driveway in a different place to avoid the issue with the tree or not, you know, that we were never given that opportunity here. The tree warden wasn't given the opportunity. And it really creates a very significant issue, I think, going forward if folks see this as a possibility without any consequence whatsoever. And so I would urge us to vote in favor of the motion to table, and I would ask that staff follow up with the tree warden to obtain additional information, including whether, you know, what the prospect is for the applicant replacing this tree as mature as it was, or what the cost would be to replace this tree. And maybe the tree warden, on balance now, doesn't want to replace this tree with a mature planting, but we could use the money that would otherwise cost to do that to replant some other area in town. And that would serve two purposes. That would serve the purposes of deterring future applicants and future residents from simply cutting down trees in the public right-of-way that they shouldn't otherwise do. And it would also help the tree warden to, you know, replant some areas around town. So that's my 2 cents on that, and I'm interested to hear what others have to say. Commissioner Ford.
I think, they were here, I think, twice, 2 nights.
He was on, he was here.
I would,
Let's just make sure that we're doing this properly. Is Commissioner Ford as an alternate available on this in executive session?
well, depends on, right, but you had one, Commissioner Francis was at the first hearing, not the second. Commissioner Kelly was at the second hearing, but not the first. I don't know if they're caught up
Okay.
on the video.
So I'll ask each individually.
No.
Commissioner Francis, you're not up to speed on this one?
No.
Okay. And Commissioner Kelly?
I saw the little part of the meeting, I think it was.
All right. So Commissioner Francis, so we need to know...
Table, right?
The vote is to table, but it's also an executive session discussion, so unless Commissioner Ford is on for the item, then technically he's not supposed to participate in the executive session. So we need an alternate for Commissioner Francis, and so Commissioner Ford, you're sitting for Commissioner Francis on this item.
So my only comment is that this is an example of begging for forgiveness rather than permission.
Right.
And it's really about the, the example we set for other contractors and developers who come before us in the future that exercise their unilateral discretion to take out a tree or whatever else. So, I mean, I don't know the answer to this question. Is there anything else? I mean, I think that's a fair remedy. What are the values of the tree? But is there anything else the commission can do to send a message to any other developers that might want to do this in the future?
Okay. Commissioner Noonan?
This, again, struck me as more of an ignorance. It struck me initially that there was more of an ignorance, that he didn't understand the proper procedure. I'm not sure I sensed a type of, I'm trying to get away with something. It struck me more of just an ignorance of the procedure. They thought it was a line of sight issue they thought they had, and they tried to rectify it, not really understanding the consequences of it. Just to add to the chairman, in the warden's report, he mentioned line of sight not being an issue.
Yeah, I didn't remember that, and I don't have the email in
Was
front
that
of
what,
me.
I thought I heard the one...
Yeah, the tree warden did indicate, in his opinion, based on where he thought that, or knew the trees that existed, that he did not feel that they would have created a line of sight problem.
I mean,
But, I'm sorry.
It was just the line of sight issue, and that he said that the trees were healthy. I just would like a follow-up as to what he was basing, at least the line of sight on. If he looked at the plans, what his basis of it was. And as far as the healthy tree, if it was just simply because he never got a work order, or he actually, I imagine he's not going out inspecting every tree. But just as, if we're going to table it, just follow up on those two items, please. But again, I mean, ultimately, it struck me as more of an ignorance of the procedure, and I'm happy to table it just to give myself some more thought as to what should be done.
Fair enough. I think the two points are valid for follow-up. Staff, you can include those on the follow-up, and then your other point as to his, intent, or, what was really happening there, I think is appropriate for us to discuss after we get that information and we, debate on, what to do with it, basically, Does anybody else have any other comments on this? Okay. So the motion on the table is to table. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion to table carries unanimously. Next item is compliances, 238 Post Road, application of Vladimir Avedon for an elevator vestibule for an existing building in the Design Commercial District.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this building and its sister building next door share a common access drive. This building, you may know, it's on the westerly building, houses Craft 250 restaurant among other tenants, just to kind of ballpark you there. There's an existing second floor office occupancy here for which the owner wishes to provide an elevator. What is proposed is an elevator vestibule on the right-hand side of the building. There's no increase in occupied space being proposed here. However, there's the drive lane between the buildings, and there's a parking bay on the right-hand side that's shared with that building on the right. And to accommodate the footprint of the elevator in the vestibule, they're looking to shift that parking bay over 5 feet closer to the building on the right, making room for a new pedestrian walkway and curb on the left-hand side to access that elevator. And in so doing, they're maintaining the required 24-foot drive aisle behind those parking spaces on the right. Wheel stops will be required for that, so they don't bump into the building. There's a strip of mulch there that's being taken out. There's really no significant landscaping there, and there's no sidewalk that's being removed as a result of this proposal.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly,
Second.
second by Commissioner Alessi. Commissioner Kennelly?
The elevators needed the effort to work with staff to provide, and with the designer to provide what appears to be a reasonable compromise to deal with pedestrian access. I would say that we should approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Alessi, anyone
I'm
else?
satisfied.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, this is a good renovation, in addition to the reasons that were proposed by the applicant, for convenience and for the professional building. It's now, handicap accessible. And the other changes to the site plan are compliant with our regulations. So, I would urge us to support this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep. Commissioner McAleese.
The only question I have,
Oh, it is, yeah. Unless I'm reading the plans wrong, I'm looking on the plan, the top sheet, shows the elevator on the second floor, the elevator lobby, and then directly below how it ends up, or how it starts on the first floor. But is there a sidewalk or something going to it, or does it just go on to tarmac? I mean, how does that...
No, if you look on the site plan, they're moving, there's a dashed line on the right-hand side of the building. There's a note there that they're proposing a new concrete curb and walk. So is that whole driveway and parking bay is shifting 5 feet to the right on the plan to create the space for what they're labeling is the proposed concrete curb and walk. So there'll be a walkway along the right-hand side of that building.
And an overhang in front of the vestibule there
I see.
over the
Correct.
sidewalk.
Okay, yeah.
All right, I'm clear, thank you.
Anybody else? So the motion on the table is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The compliance application is approved unanimously. Next item is 1979 Post Road, application of David Finkel to convert an existing retail and medical space to office space in an existing building in the Design Commercial District.
Okay, some of you might fondly remember this building as the home of DeVore's Bakery for many years. This building is currently occupied by a dental office and a food use on the first floor with retail space on the second floor. There was a dance studio up there at one point. There was an e-cigarette facility. Largely due to the building's age, this site is non-conforming with respect to parking. What this proposal is to do is to convert the food service use on the first floor and a portion of the existing dental office in the entirety of the second floor to professional office space. The parking requirement for professional office is 1 space per 1,000, less than that for retail or medical. So the conversion of 5,700 feet here from retail or medical to general office actually reduces the nonconformity with respect to parking by 5 spaces. There are no exterior changes proposed. It's just a reconfiguration of the existing dental office on the first floor and bringing in a professional office use here versus the retail uses.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly,
Second.
second by Commissioner Alessi. Commissioner Kennelly?
As we can hear from Mr. Wentz's description of the recent mixed history over there in terms of various things that have been in since DeVore's, this is an effort by, it appears, by ownership to try to get some unity in terms of the tenants involved. We get a benefit that a non-conforming structure that already was over the parking number comes down a bit, so I would say we should approve.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Kennelly. I agree. I think it's a good application, and it's definitely an improvement for the area and the town along the Post Road there. Good. Anybody else have any comments? No? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Compliance is approved unanimously. Next item is 111 Black Rock Turnpike, application of Aaron Hagel to establish a food truck use in the Design Industrial District.
Okay, this property is across the street from BJ's Wholesale Club, houses Planet Fitness in Tumble Jungle. Both are interior or indoor recreational facilities. The food truck is proposed to operate within limited morning hours. There's some photos that were submitted in with the application. While it is true that this parking lot has many available spaces during certain hours, Section 28.2 of the regulations requires that parking be made available for occupancy for the full duration of the use of land, meaning that the food truck cannot take away parking that's required for the existing uses here. The required the required number of parking spaces for the uses here are 129 spaces. There are 130 on the site. The applicant's sketch indicates the truck's going to occupy at least 3 spaces with probably additional space required for customer queuing. So it's questionable in our view whether this application complies with Section 28.2.
Thank you. 28.2.
I'm going to make a motion to deny this application.
Motion to deny by Commissioner Alessi.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Barretts. Commissioner Alessi?
It doesn't meet our regulations, and I am not in favor of granting a reduction in parking spaces for this parking lot, and I am still not in favor of food trucks in these kind of situations. I mean, there's a lot of people who pay rent in town, who pay mortgages in town, and taxes in town, and I don't find it fair to them that a food truck could just pull up to a train station and take that business away from them, from the people who are paying their fair share. So for that reason, I'm going to deny this application.
And by those comments, you mean like an approved permanent food truck, stationed in a parking lot, taking up parking space. I mean, obviously, food trucks get permitted and they rove around, and then food trucks is a general proposition. They're not a bad thing.
We're just taking away parking spaces from...
When you approve it as a permanent structure in a parking lot, right, or a permanent fixture, yeah. Commissioner Barretts?
Yeah, I just have an issue with, not so much with the food truck, but with the taking
with the taking away of parking spaces. It doesn't comply with our regulations. When, when Mr. Wen talked about customer care, we don't even know what that would be. If you're going to allow a food truck in the parking, there has to be like way enough parking so that it can be there, there's still ample parking for the other uses there, and that the customers can queue up and not create any kind of hazard. So, in a situation like this where the parking light's right on the number, I think we have to deny this.
I mean, that's the other aspect of it, which is kind of a little wacky. I mean, we don't know how many people would be lining up and do it. So it's not just 3 spaces that we're going to allocate, for this truck to be parked there full time. Yeah, what about, right. So there's no allocation for that. So I support the motion. Anybody else? Okay, the motion on the table is to deny. A vote in the affirmative is to deny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The compliance is denied unanimously. Next on our agenda is the public hearing. There are a number of people here for what I presume is Stilson Road. We have a couple of items on before that. They should move along relatively quickly. The way the procedure works is that the applicant has the first presentation. They go through their application and all of the details, call their witnesses, etc. When the applicant is finished, then the hearing moves to public comment. Every member of the public that wishes to be heard will have an opportunity to speak. There's no time limit on the members of the public who wish to talk. We just ask that you keep your comments germane to the issues that are before us and as concise as you can. There are a lot of people, and if everybody's just saying the same thing over and over again, we get it. I would also like to let everybody know that you can submit your comments in writing. That we read everything that we get, and sometimes, frankly, the written word is more persuasive than the spoken word in a public hearing. Gives us a chance to digest the written comments. You can send an email to on the TPZ website to staff, and they'll distribute it to all of us, and it will be in our record. We'll likely get to this in a short while. It's about 10 after 8 now, maybe 8:45, 9 o'clock. We have a curfew of 11 o'clock. If we don't finish with Stilson Road tonight, which we likely won't, the public hearing will be continued to our next regular meeting date, which is December 13th, and then we'll resume at that point. Presuming we finish the public hearing on December 13th, then it will be on our next agenda for executive session, at which we will do what we just did here, take the matters that have come before us previously for consideration and discussion and voting. And so that's the procedure, okay? Do we need to, anybody? No, good. All right. So I'll call the first item, 680 Stilson Road, request of Carp Associates for 100% release of a $41,024 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone. 680 Stilson Road. The rules require that you simply come up and make the request. It gives an opportunity for the public. If there's anybody out there that's got a problem with the work that you did, they can come in and say, hey,
Okay,
don't release that bond.
so I'd like to request to release the bond, please.
Excellent, you did a great job.
Thank you.
You did a great job. I'm sorry, what's your name for the record? Gordon Jacobson. Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Going once, going twice? All right. I'll close the public hearing on 680 Stilson Road. Next is 892 Harbor Road, request of Attorney William Fitzpatrick on behalf of 910 Harbor Investors LLC for 100% release of a $26,540 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an R3 zone.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'll try to be quick, although I don't think
You
I
can't
can
do
match.
that. You
I
can't
can't
do
match
that.
Mr. Jacobson. For the record, my name's Bill Fitzpatrick. I'm an attorney in Fairfield with the law firm of Fitzpatrick, Frey, and Bologna. We have offices at 1735 Post Road. I'm here tonight representing 910 Harbor Investors LLC. The principal of that LLC is Mr. Gene Gorab. Mr. Gorab purchased a lot on Harbor Road, built his home. Request tonight is for the release of the bond posted pertaining to the subdivision improvements. My understanding is you have in your file a letter from Laura Pulley, the Town Engineering Department, confirming that all the subdivision improvements have been completed. Therefore, I'd like to request release of that bond.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Fitzpatrick? Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Okay. I'll close the public hearing on
Thank you.
892 Harbor Road. Thank you. Next item is 1537, 1571 Stratfield Road, special exception application of SLD Development 2 LLC pertaining to the construction of an assisted living facility in an R3 zone.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I'm an attorney in Fairfield with the law firm of Fitzpatrick, Frame, Bologna, with offices at 1735 Post Road. I'm here this evening representing the applicant SLD Development LLC, contract purchaser of the property at 1537 and 1571 Stratfield Road. This property is the subject of the special exception application before the commission at present. My understanding is that at the last meeting on October 25th, which was a continuance of the landscaping discussion that started on September 20, public hearing was left open for the limited purpose of providing drawings or renderings relative to landscaping. Updated renderings have been submitted to the commission. At this point, to outline those renderings, I'd like to introduce Mr. William Kenny to the commission. Bill is the principal of William Kenny Associates of Fairfield, is a professional wetland scientist, a soil scientist, and a landscape architect. Bill.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to review with you the modified plans that have been submitted, and I'd like to say it's been a substantial increase in the amount of evergreen plantings shown across the front of the property. You have an evergreen wall that extends across the property, and it has depth. So there's openings where you have the drives, and the drawing that you see on the third easel, we added a drawing to help you understand the changes that were made. It's drawing L3. So there's L1 that shows the current proposal. L3 shows an overlay of the changes that have been made since the last submission. And this is L3 on the easel here. And the drawings that the trees that have a red outline are the new trees. There's a 5-fold increase of evergreen trees across the front of the property. We went from 10 to approximately 60 trees. So that's what you see there. And there's the two driveways, and we have the staggered row that goes right up to the edge of each driveway, close to Stratfield Road. And then to mitigate or address some of the views that may be up through the driveway, we've added layers of evergreen trees at the corners of the buildings, at the end of the political share, and again at the corner of the building. So there's layers and there's an extensive length of evergreens. And so then we have on the next two easels are the three views that we shared with you, perspective views that we shared with you the last time we were with you, and there's a 5-year growth and a 10-year growth. So starting from the southeast corner, the furthest easel to the right shows a view with the 5-year growth, and then the view to the left is 10-year growth. This view is directly east of the property, and again, on the left is the 10-year growth, and on the right is the 5-year growth. And then the last view will be from the northeast looking southwest. And I'd like to say that because there is an evergreen wall of trees, that whether it be winter views or summer views, they're going to be substantially the same. You're going to have that blocked view throughout the year, all seasons.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kennelly.
Thanks very much. Mr. Kenny, I just want to compliment you and your staff, or your firm, because especially with these renderings where you were able to show us summer and winter view, excellent in terms of being able to have us understand what the impact will be in the long run. I also thought that the plan design, the depth, et cetera, kind of addressing the issue of, you know, how will this hold up and all, was excellent. So I just want to compliment you and your firm for what I would describe as really excellent work in terms of the presentation. One note, Mr. Chairman, if there's some way that these examples could, and I don't want to add more work to staff, but if there's some way we could post these on the website so that local residents could have a better sense. Obviously, you know, win, lose, or draw whether this is approved or not. If it is, for example, they could have some sense of how this would theoretically grow into the neighborhood over time. And if they could be directed, if neighborhood associations, et cetera, or concerned neighbors were able to look at this online, I do think, I mean, obviously they could come downtown and get a copy, but this might be more convenient. It would allow folks to kind of get a sense of what you've offered in terms of a fairly significant change to the design, and it appears to be its visual impact, the visual impact of the project. So, great, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just, it was a real team effort, and frankly, it wasn't my firm that did the perspectives, but we appreciate your compliments and, okay.
Commissioner Francis.
I too think you did an excellent job, and it will help.
I think it is.
I wanted to ask though about the pines further down Stratfield Road that have been damaged over the years by the state's snow
The salt spray.
removal salts. Are those were the soft white pines, these are different
That's right.
And-
So these are spruce trees,
and
and...
should hold up better?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
They also appear to be somewhat further back off the road.
Yeah.
Because of the right-of-way.
Right, because the right-of-way is such that there's less of an impact by the snow removal. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Chairman, in closing, I'd like to make just a few brief points. First, I think the plan you've seen is extremely robust. Updated plan includes more than 161 trees, 263 shrubs, plus ground covering, plus the rain garden plantings. It looks virtually like Sherwood Forest. Secondly, I'd like to emphasize, as Mr. Kenny stated, we're using the appropriate size to ensure the tree's viability. We have virtually no other place to add trees. I think that we've buffered it to the nth degree. I'd also like to note that my client did spend hours and many, many meetings meeting with the neighbors, multiple meetings. Changes were made to the application to address their concerns. The end result was that at the public hearing before this commission, a majority of the speakers at the public hearing supported the application, which by my experience is a rarity. At this point, Mr.
Did you,
Ken-
in assessing that, did you take into consideration the written comments that we made? Or
I
is
did
that-
not.
Is that, so
I did
that,
not.
that assessment is based on the folks
I
who
just
came out
dealt
to the
with
hearing?
11 of 19 speakers at the public hearing itself.
Thanks.
Lastly, Mr. Kenny and I would be happy to answer any questions, as well as my client. Thank you for your time and attention. Obviously, we'd appreciate a vote by the commission as soon as is feasible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So given that we've got new information, new plan submitted with respect to the landscape and the trees, I would open this up for public comment limited to the new evidence and landscaping plan that was submitted. Are there any members of the public that wish to be heard on this item? Going once, going twice. I will close the public hearing on this item. Words you've been waiting to hear for a while now. Very good. All right.
13. December 13th.
Next item is 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University for an addition to the existing campus center building in the AA zone. Mr. Fallon.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm here tonight on behalf of Fairfield University with regard to this application. With me tonight is Mr. David Frasinelli, the Associate Vice President for Facilities at Fairfield University, Mr. Kurt Krasinski, the Director of Campus Planning and Design at the University, and Lisa Ferrero, who's busy setting up here, who is our architect from the firm of Goody and Clancy. I would thank the Commission for hearing this application on what I know is a busy evening, although it's a very straightforward application and we intend to be brief. The timing of this addition to the campus center is an important one for the university so that we can accommodate the needs of our existing students, as I'll briefly reference. What we're asking to do is to approve this addition to the existing campus center in order to provide additional space which is necessary to create current overcrowding during certain periods of time in the student dining room. You'll also hear briefly from Lisa that there's a fundamental desire here to improve the overall dining experience for our students. That's an important thing now in the competitive marketplace that higher education is. There is that expectation of quality ambiance and dining experience in a university, and we want to make sure that we are comparable with our peer schools in that regard. We believe that the improved food service also will have a benefit because right now we primarily serve freshmen and sophomores. Our analysis indicates that with these new and improved facilities, we're going to have additional students from the university, larger numbers of juniors and seniors who will avail themselves of on-campus dining options, which obviously will result in less trips to and from the campus to dine off-site. You do have a letter from Mr. Michael Galanti of Frederick P. Clark & Associates. It gets right to the point, and among the points it makes is that that is a likely byproduct of this application, but certainly there's not going to be any increase in traffic associated with this application insofar as we are improving an existing facility to serve the needs of our existing student body. Another benefit here is there's not really a faculty dining room on the campus. This plan calls for a faculty dining room. That upgraded dining facility will again encourage faculty members to remain on campus for luncheon meetings as opposed to driving to and from the campus for lunch. We had a code enforcement review meeting on August 16th, 2016. All the comments as noted in the code amendments have been complied with. We also did receive a certificate of wetlands conformance with regard to the proposed work from the Conservation Department in August of this year. I'm going to ask Ms. Ferraro to briefly give you an overview of our exterior elevations and interior floor plan. We will do that and not take up more than 5 minutes of the Commission's time, but Ms. Ferraro.
So this is a proposed addition to the Barone Campus Center, which is on Loyola Drive, which is the main entrance to the campus. The original building was built in 1969, and then it was added to one time in 2001. The existing building, the original building, is a concrete precast building called, brutalist in style, and when it was added to, it was a glassy curtain wall addition, and what we are hoping to do is bridge the two styles of those two parts with our piece of the building. So, as John mentioned, the campus dining has changed a lot over the years, and students come with greater expectations about what kind of experience they should have there. So rather than pushing a tray through a cafeteria line, they're being given options. Cooking is being done on display. This is partially to address their wants and desires, as a generation of students has grown up eating in restaurants, but also due to food allergies, which have become more prevalent, allowing them to trust that the food is being cooked on display and that they will be given what is safe for them to eat. So the addition is going to be about 25,000 square feet distributed on 2 floors, floors 3 and 4. The floor plans show on the left-hand side the 3rd floor, and on the right-hand side the 4th floor. It's an unusual building in that it steps down the hill, so the 1st and 2nd floor actually they're not part of this. The 3rd floor is at grade where it is. Aside from, improving the dining experience, there's also the desire to improve congestion in the building. Students were all being funneled through a 9-foot wide stair, both up and down, to the dining facility, which is on the upper level. And so the concept is to improve circulation, giving a separate entrance to the dining facility from the exit. So in orange, that is the new circulation on the 3rd floor to distribute students across the 3rd floor and relieve congestion. And then there's going to be a new multi-purpose room to enhance existing event spaces on campus. And then on the right-hand side, the floor plan, yellow is all of the seats and this interactive dining experience, and in blue are the actual where the cooking is happening.
What's the gray on the 4th floor, on the bottom?
The gray on the left-hand side,
No, all the way to the right, the gray on the 4th floor.
those are restrooms.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, that's a good point. There are no restrooms on the level where dining is happening now, so that's an important
That's what yeah, like
addition to the building to make it more functional. And so you can see from the perspective view that we're going to have a glassy, we call it the pavilion on the north side to welcome people into the building, which will face Loyola Drive. And then the remaining pieces of the building will be precast concrete similar to the original building. So in that way, we're hoping to bridge the 2 styles of the existing building.
Commissioner Francis?
The current, the circulation as it exists now means that people who have accessibility issues have a completely different arrival and approach than everybody else. And so with the addition, we're going to make it so that a diner who is in a wheelchair or otherwise needs it will arrive at the same point within the dining facility. So the new elevator will connect the 3rd and 4th floors only. The 1st and 2nd floors of the building are served by elevators elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
In working on this application, I realized how much expectations and student dining has changed. When I was in Fairfield in the late 60s, early 70s, I remember mystery meat every evening and just whatever it is. So come back in a time machine and come there. I did want to point out as I close, obviously this building is located in a very central portion of the facility. It's generally in the addition, not visible from any place around. Having said that, as is the university's policy, we did meet with all of our surrounding neighbors to acquaint them with what we were doing so that they would be aware of it. I don't believe anybody had any objection to it, but we did do that neighborhood outreach as we do. So we thank you for hearing this tonight. As I said, very straightforward application, a nice enhancement, a needed enhancement to our university profile as we continue to maintain the level of commitment we have as a higher education facility, but we wanted to make sure that we made you a presentation that was concise, but we'd be pleased to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks very much. I had a couple of questions from the report that I just wanted to confirm. Engineering, dimensions of the units for the detention systems and concrete galleries, those are now shown on the plans?
Correct.
The fire chief said the construction fence will not work. Well, I don't know exactly what that means.
I'm not sure I do either, but we could, Mr. Frasinelli is here, I'm sure we could address that. This is David Frasinelli, who, as I introduced him before, is our Associate Vice President for Facilities.
Thank you.
So I don't need an introduction. We engaged early on with the building department and the fire marshal to review egresses out of the building. We have satisfied them, we believe, to how we're laying out the construction fence and the site logistics.
Were you aware of the comment from the code enforcement that there was an issue with the placement of the construction fence?
I am not aware of that, Kurt, but certainly we can modify the fence and any...
Right. however, so
You know-
it's a condition of approval to coordinate with the fire department on that.
We believe that we have, if there was an issue with the fence, it would have probably been related to egress from the building, and I believe that we have satisfied him with all of the egress issues.
Well, we can make a note of that for in the further consideration. You mentioned the egress, because that was another comment that the chief had, was in the future, no 3 and 4 bedrooms for egress. And I was a little confused by that comment. Bedrooms?
We filed 3 applications, one of which, because of its timing priority, you're hearing tonight for the Barone Campus Center.
Okay.
We have 2 other applications in your pipeline for a future hearing. One is for a new dormitory. If you look at your code notes, the staff was able to accommodate having the code meeting for all 3 of our pending projects on the same day.
So everybody keeps the code enforcement for all the applications then?
Correct. So that comment you're looking at, and maybe the comment, I'd have to look at the notes involving the fire
The
fence.
construction.
It is,
Might
yeah.
relate,
To
might
the
relate
dorm.
to,
It is.
relates to the dormitory.
It relates to the dormitory.
And we will be addressing that when we have your hearing before the dorm. The code
Oh,
notes are
I
a
see
little
how
con-
it's set
yeah,
out.
the code notes are a little
No.
confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it takes them in pieces, so.
Right.
All right, let me make sure that my comments.
We have
then-
3 applications. This one, the new dormitory, and the campus parking facility. The
Got
latter
it.
2 will be heard at some future date.
Got
And, but those code notes are segregated in that regard. And so that's why we were a little flat-footed. I think we're well aware of the comment with regard to the fire or the fencing, but that really will relate to the dormitory, and we will have addressed it.
All right, very good. Yeah, all the other questions that I had on this related to the other pieces.
Correct.
There were none on there related to this then.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
Does
that's
anybody
really
else
what
have any
we
other
have.
questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you very much.
Is there any members of the public that wish to be heard on this application? Going once, going twice? Okay, I'll close the public hearing on 1073 North Benson Road. Okay, next item and last on our agenda is 430, 452, 470, 484 Stilson Road, special exception application of ND Acquisition LLC pertaining to the construction of an assisted living facility in the A zone.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. I'm Attorney Tim Hollister from Hartford, representing the applicant. My colleague Andrea Gomes is passing out some supplemental materials. There are 12 copies, should be enough for each commissioner and one for the staff. Attorney Fallon is my co-counsel on this application. This is an application for a special exception and site plan approval for a 64-unit memory care community at 430, 452, 470, and 44 Stilson Road. The applicant, ND Acquisitions, is based in Newton Lower Falls, Massachusetts, represented here tonight by Michael Glenn, standing behind me. I will note for the record, procedural compliance, the published and mailed notices have been completed as required by the zoning regulations. I do want to thank Mr. Devonchik and Mr. Wendt for their logistical assistance in getting us to the application hearing tonight. The application materials at this point are, you should have a package that bears a cover date of September 1, and that was submitted along with a set of site plans, 25 sheets, including architectural plans by CBT Architects. There is a traffic report from Stantec Engineering, their New Haven office, stormwater engineering report by Stantec. There is a disaster and emergency recovery plan, and then we gave you also supplemental materials that have a cover date of November 4th, and that is an enhanced and revised landscaping plan that we'll talk about tonight, and also a property value impact analysis prepared by Chris Karen of the Karen Fazio. So what I've just given you tonight is a presentation outline, so you can follow along. And then there are materials on the company called Epic Senior Living, which is the intended memory care service provider. There are some community statistics, that's tab 2, and I'll talk about those during my presentation. Tab 3 is 2 alternative site plan layouts that were considered but then rejected as not being sufficiently protective of the neighbors on Stilson Road. And tab 4 of tonight's materials is an recent email from Town Engineer Laura Pooley approving the site plan. So what we're going to do tonight in terms of presentation is I'm going to have what I call the major visuals on the screen behind you. We will use boards. Chris, why don't you move that right over here? We will have boards for data and details, and then a copy of all of the PowerPoint slides and all the boards is in these materials which I just gave you. So you have a 11 by 7 color copy of everything that will either be on the screen or on the board in front of you to refer to.
Thanks. So before you go any further, are all the materials that you just submitted, were they all submitted electronically to the staff?
Yes, and in fact, I just gave Mr. Wendt a disc with the copy of the slide, so I think he has
Great.
everything electronically.
So the renderings and the charts and all the materials are now in electronic form?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
So and I'm going to apologize to the commissioners for making you turn around, but the subject properties, the 4 properties on Stilson Road are in this circle that I'm pointing to right now with the laser pointer. So this is Black Rock Turnpike and Stilson Road here, and this is a slide that we will use in the traffic analysis. There are single-family homes in each of the 4 lots. The properties will be merged. It is important that this is a Residence A zone where an assisted living community is allowed by special exception, Regulation Section 12.5.17, and of course that means that the use is allowed by law, subject to conditions to address any impacts. But another way to say that is, in this instance, we are not requesting any zone change, no variances, and no waivers. The subject properties are also located a little bit to the southwest of commercial uses along Black Rock Turnpike and also on Stilson Road. So the property is right here, commercial uses adjacent on the north and the northwest. The proposed development is a 64-unit memory care community. As I mentioned, the operator, called Epic, is a nationally well-known service provider specializing in memory care, and the ultimate program is called Bridges by Epic. That's the memory care program that would be provided. It is very important to note right from the get-go that this is a proposed 2-story building. The building entrance is angled to the right here, but on this slide you can see that the building entrance would be closest, the right side would be closest to Black Rock Turnpike, and therefore as far away from the other residences on Stilson Road, which would be to the left of the site plan on the screen. The building is also oriented so that the open space, which is both the courtyard, which is here, the courtyard here, which is an open recreation space for the community, and the conservation easement, Conservation easement has been reviewed and approved by the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission and has the added benefit of preserving and in some cases even enhancing water quality in the area. The process to date is that we received wetlands approval in June of 2016. Several conditions of approval. I've given you a copy of the wetlands approval in tab 6 of the September 1st materials. And one of the realities here is that the wetlands process and the conditions of approval the utilities, the stormwater have effectively now governed the layout of the site and the engineering. We went through a code review way back in May of 2015. I've also given you in the September 1st materials a copy of the code review report and a demonstration of the compliance that we've achieved of everything that was brought up at the code review since. There has been periodic outreach by the applicant to the neighbors. In August of 2016, as required by the zoning regulations, we have had consultations with the fire chief, the fire marshal, the director of health, Mr. Devanchik and Mr. Wendt, and then most recently, a final review by town engineer Laura Pooley. In terms of community data, it's important to understand that the 64 units here are focused on memory care, dementia, and Alzheimer's. Another way to say that is this is a specialized subset of assisted living. Assisted living, as you may know in general, I know the commission has reviewed several of these applications. You know, assisted living is generally help with life's most basic tasks, getting up in the morning, getting dressed, eating, and so forth. But memory care is a specialized service, and this is exclusively a memory care facility. The second thing that is...
Excuse me for 1 second.
Yes, sir.
There's a revised code review minutes that you said prior to the, after
No,
this?
the code review minutes are at
Okay, I see,
tab
September
5.
1st, okay.
September 1st, tab 5.
Okay, Attorney Hollister, how come we don't have anything from the fire department or police department in the code review minutes?
I'm sorry, from the who?
We don't have anything from the fire department or the police department.
Well, I can verify that we consulted with them, and Mr. Fallon did that consultation, and they gave us an email saying that we were ready to proceed. I don't know that we... Is that correct, John?
Is that in the record?
No, well...
We did do the consultation as required by the regulations.
No, we appreciate that. So in the June 16 minutes from the code enforcement meeting, both the fire and the police say contact them for their comments.
Which we did.
Right. And if there was an email subsequent to that, that's not in the record that we received in our packet.
Okay, I didn't have that to submit for the package. Maybe Mr. Wendt has a copy, or...
We'll get that to you.
Thank you.
From both?
For both, yes. By both...
Does that exist for both?
Oh, yes.
It does?
The letter, for the record, John Fallon, there's an email from the chief, the fire chief, after meetings with him, where he basically indicates that we had addressed questions he had and made changes that he requested. We will get you that email.
But the problem is, his questions aren't showing up in the code review minutes at all, though.
He didn't really have questions as much as when we met with him, he just had questions which we answered to his satisfaction. But there is an email from the fire chief which we will supply you. I met twice with Gary Wickman, Sergeant Wickman of the Traffic Division. We gave him copies of all the plans. I asked him if he had any comments to please let us know. I did not hear back from him, but we'll get you some form of confirmation from him as well.
Okay.
You'll speak to the fire department?
Well, I think in light of that, I mean, I don't know how long this is going to go, but we should have some confirmation from fire and police that, you know, their review of the plans. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, we will do that. The second point, very important regarding the community itself, is at 64 units, this is smaller, demonstrably smaller, substantially smaller than most assisted living communities, which generally are in the range of 85 to 110 units. This is smaller than any of the assisted living developments that this commission has previously considered, Benchmark, Maplewood, and the Stratfield Road community that you reviewed tonight. For example, this community is 1/3 smaller than Maplewood, which is 98 units. Yes, sir.
Thanks. One of the things I'm interested in, just as now a student of these kind of facilities, you're building this to be a hospital grade, I assume, in terms of the structural elements of the project. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that. This is not the type of community the
No, I
state.
understand that, but I'm
Okay.
saying, but in terms of, I'll tell you what it is that I've heard that, at least in discussions about this, that the sweet spot for being able to make a facility like this work financially is somewhere between 80 to 95 units. But you seem to be able to bring us an application that's in the mid-60s, but you can make it work financially?
Well, and now I'm a
Yeah.
little bit out of my depth here, but
Right. I'm just trying to understand.
my understanding is assisted living facilities, the sweet spot is 85 to 90. Memory care is a specialized, and indeed, the other assisted living communities that you have reviewed
Are higher.
have an assisted living component and a memory care
care.
component that is
As a
smaller.
subcomponent, right.
Right, so this is
Purely memory care.
This is exclusively memory care, and they're able to make it work with just
If I could ask, why is it that memory care is able to be done in a smaller size as opposed to assisted living? Is it because the capabilities of the individuals who live in assisted living are greater and therefore they need
Well,
more
I
space?
think, I think it's essentially delivering a specialized service to a concentrated population. That's why it works. You know, I can't say that
I
there
understand
are...
what you're saying.
I can't say that there are, I know there are...
You're more of a niche market
Oh, yes,
provider
absolutely.
than because of it being memory care. Okay.
That's correct. Other community data, 40 to 45 full-time equivalent employees on the site, an approximate capital investment of about $15 million, preliminary estimate of property tax, about $320,000, several systems for resident security, which are explained in the Emergency and Disaster Recovery Plan. There certainly might be questions about ambulances. There are many of these types of communities in existence, so there are good data on the ambulances. Ambulances average 2 a week, and these are transports. They are not emergencies with sirens, and that there may be some misunderstanding about that, but they are transports, not emergencies. It is a completely sprinklered building in terms of fire suppression, and it is also a steel frame building. Now, a couple of observations and points of emphasis. This site with sewer, water, good traffic access is suitable for many other types of uses beside memory care or assisted living. It could be an extension of commercial uses on Black Rock Turnpike. It could be institutional. It could be religious. It could be multifamily residential. And I will say on the record that I am working with another applicant in the town of Wilton on an assisted living community, 90 units on 4 acres, where all of the abutting single-family homeowners testified in favor of the community at the Wilton Planning and Zoning Commission, saying that if the property is going to be developed, assisted living is the quietest and least intrusive use that we can conceive of. And so I think there are instances where that is the reaction of neighboring property owners, given the alternatives. Now, again, as I mentioned, I know that this commission has reviewed several assisted living and with assisted living communities with memory care components. I would hope from that experience you understand, even though we will cover this in our presentation, that these are generally quiet, minimal traffic generation. The residents do not drive. There's no public school impact. They're positive property tax producers. They require minimal municipal services. They serve a growing need within the aging population, and they allow seniors to remain close to their families. As I mentioned, this facility is different because of its specialized focus on memory care, dementia, and Alzheimer's. In tonight's materials, tab 2, we've given you some data that within a 5-mile radius of the subject property, there are approximately almost 4,000 seniors aged 75 and over who have some form of dementia, memory loss, or Alzheimer's. And if we were to add up the memory care units in the 3 communities that you've already reviewed, Benchmark, Maplewood, and Stratfield Road tonight, there are only 78 memory care units. So we believe that there is more than ample need for this type of community. I would also mention, if the commission or members of the public want to see a template of this building, the same building that we are proposing here exists in the town of Trumbull. It's called Bridges at Trumbull, and it's at 2415 Reservoir Road. It's been open about 18 months. filling up at the schedule that was predicted. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through our presentation through use of consultants and experts, and I will tell you that the focuses are harmonizing this community with the residences along Stilson Road through architecture and landscaping. We're going to explain how the plan tries to avoid any impacts from building mass, light, noise, and traffic. We're going to demonstrate that there will be no adverse impact on property values on Stilson Road, and we will demonstrate compliance with Section 27 of the zoning regulations, the special exception criteria. So we will follow the outline that I handed out to you. We've timed this out, the remaining portion, at about 45 minutes, and we'll try to leave ample time for your questions and for public comment. So you're going to hear first from Chris Pittman of CBT Architects, then Teo Kindermans from Stantec about landscaping and screening, Christopher Mojica from Stantec on traffic, Philip Katz from Stantec on engineering, and Chris Karen of Karen and Fazio on property values. So I'm just going to let the consultants come up here to the microphone and proceed through the presentation. Chris?
You have to go, is it right click? The floor plans. The floor plans. Hi, my name is Chris Pittman with CBT Architects. This is, as you know, a memory care project, and 3 volumes in yellow. You'll see that we have the main core area, which is consisted of, you walk through an entrance porch, which is shown in the 3D rendering here, which is a residential porch, which is typical you see in a lot of single-family homes as you enter. And as you walk through, you walk into the reception area, which also has a living room and a fireplace for residences and their family members as they come in. And also in yellow at the core here, you'll see that we have at the front, you have staff offices, conference room, the main kitchen, and in the back here, which leads to the courtyard, an activities room where the residents come and they do a variety of different activities in the space. And then from there, you can go into the households, which is in light purple. And the basic concept of each household is around the perimeter, you have all of the units. So of course, people can, as they're in their unit, can look out. We have very high windows that allow, it's a double hung window with a transom above. So when you're in this space, it's a 10-foot high ceiling. A lot of natural light comes in, which the residents like. And then as you move around the perimeter and get into the middle part of the volume, this is where you have living room, kitchen, dining, laundry, sort of the support for the residences. And typically, they leave their doors open because they like to interact with other residents that are in the units. And they have direct access also from each household out into the main courtyard, which is in the back zone here. So that's essentially the concept. The materials being used, which you can clearly see on the rendering here again, is when you enter the porch, we have a metal roof, and then as you walk around to the volume of each household, it consists of the base condition here is stone, and then at the top is shingles, which again is standard in a lot of single-family homes. To break up the volumes, we have a lot of in and out, I'll say, so you don't have just one long volume. I mean, that was our concern, that a project like this, being only 2 stories, the length of it, we needed to break that up and have other volumes come off the main volume and come out perpendicular, which again reduces the scale. Again, typically you find that in single-family residences also.
And then we also add these trim bands, which also reduce scale. And then at the top of the roof, you can see some roof brackets, which reduce the height and scale of this volume as they come out towards the street area. And then the roof is typical, what you see, asphalt shingles. When you move around the perimeter of the building, we also have at the base where it transitions from stone to lap shingle siding, and the core, when you walk around the back, and then in this volume here is the same volume with the gable roof, and then another gable roof that comes out perpendicular. At the corner here, we added a chimney, which also relates to a lot of single-family homes that you see. Most homes do have chimneys. And again, we did all this to try to reduce scaling, massing, and to make it sort of consistent what you see with single-family homes with a two-story structure.
Excuse me, that chimney is purely aesthetic at this point, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
not, you don't
Not
use that.
functional, I guess.
Correct, correct. It was just an element that we thought would be a nice gesture
Sure.
to tie into the residential, harmonize with the community in the single-family homes, yes. And then, second floor. And at the second floor, when you come up, each household still has the same concept where around the perimeter, units, core is in the middle here. We have living, dining. The dining room space at the second floor has a double height space, which is nice. It lets a lot of light in. And then when you move to the core area, also like the first floor has the activity room, and then it has a nice large outdoor deck where residents, they can come out, they can have breakfast, lunch, dinner, they can interact with other residents. And instead of having to walk down to the first floor and going out to the back courtyard area, they have this nice partially covered porch, which is pretty nice for them to use, where they can just access it right through the activities area in the main hallway here. And that's, I mean, the concept again is we really tried to use all the material. I do have material over there if you'd like to take a look at it, that we're going to be proposing for this project.
Do you have the materials on boards?
Yes. Well, some of it's pretty large, so I couldn't mount it all on board, so there's individual pieces, but...
Right, that's what I mean. Is it stuff that you can sort of bring up and just pass
Oh,
around?
yeah, sure, sure.
Mr. Chairman, just while that's coming.
Yes.
I emailed to Mr. Wendt, so it can be part of your record, an email from Chief McCarthy, just so you'll have that, It's dated August 26, 2016.
Give it all there and he'll pass it on.
And it simply reads, John, thank you. I received the plans. I really appreciate the efforts that your clients have made.
Hold on a second. Well, wait a second. Just one at a time, because I think we all want to hear what those are as you pass them around, so let Mr.
I'm sorry,
Allen-
just to finish up, and this, now Mr. Wendt has this by email, so it's part of your record. The chief says, John, thank you. I received the plans. I really appreciate the efforts that your clients have made to meet the needs of the fire department. I've reviewed the latest submission, which is what you have, and they address all the concerns that we have raised. I don't think further review or discussion is needed until the construction plans are developed. So we did have a number of meetings, or one meeting with the chief and the fire marshal, and you now have that confirmatory letter.
Great.
Now-
What's the date of the email?
August 26th, 2016 at 10:17 a.m.
Great.
And we'll have a similar confirmation from Sergeant Whitman for you.
Thank you very much.
I'll show it and then I'll pass it around.
That'd be great.
So this is the stone, which is at the first floor, which faces Stilson. It's basically along the whole front facade of the household right there.
Mhm.
And so this is the stone that we'd be using.
Is it stone or is it a culture stone?
It's a cultured stone.
May I ask you a question, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, this is passed around. I heard before that, is this structure essentially a twin of the one that is in Trumbull?
Correct.
Okay.
The color scheme's a little bit different from what we have here from Trumbull, but essentially the volume, the brackets at the roof, stone, it's very similar.
I mean, so they are similar. If I do take a look at that, I'll get a sense of the massing of the structure.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
the aesthetics aside, I'll get a sense of what it's going to feel like in the space. Let me ask you about rooftop mechanicals. I thought I saw, and I apologize, it almost appeared that what looked like white boxes on the top of the roof. This is usually something I let Mr. Alessi kind of pepper people about, but since I saw it, I jumped. What's the situation? Yeah, you probably understand what we require in terms of, I'm sure, in discussing this with staff, but it did seem like you could see the mechanicals. I don't know if that's from the elevation, but could you talk about that?
I think it's from the view looking down.
Is that
yes.
down? So
That's a
from
great
street level,
observation.
what will we have in terms of dealing with mechanicals?
So this is the view from the street here.
Okay.
And I'm going to just reference the roof plan first.
Thank you.
So what's happening is we have our roof line here, and then in the core, which is above the activities and partially over the second floor deck, there's a well which is depressed in the roof. And in that depression is where all the equipment is. So when you look up from the street, you won't see the equipment. It's a depressed area for the larger units. So that way it's not visible. You'll see this is the pitched roof, which is up at the second floor deck. And then above that is again this depression, which has the three larger mechanical units and some small units too. And then also what that does is it shields noise from transferring to the neighborhood, so we're below the 45 dBA in the evening. So,
Commissioner Francis.
Can you also discuss where the trash is and the truck coming in and how it will turn on the site?
Stantec, who's landscape and civil, they can answer that question, yes. Do you want?
No. When he gets it in his presentation. Can you keep going with the materials?
Sure. And then the two siding materials, these products are by Hardy, they're cementitious, very durable. We're going to be painting these. This is at the front entrance, at the first floor level, and then also around the back courtyard where the stone transfers, we go to just typical lap siding, which is that, again, which you see a lot of residential projects. And then at the second floor, we have the transition to shingles, which is also a Hardy product. We'll be painting it. When it transitions to the stone, we have a shingle flare, which is a nice gesture to transfer from shingles to stone.
Why are you painting a hardy board? Why don't you just leave it the color that it is? Don't you order it?
Architects, we never like their colors. They only have 22 colors, and it's just,
Okay.
we're so limited. Being limited is not good.
So where is this?
The great thing about Hardy, though, unlike wood, is when you paint it, even over a finished Hardy material, it bonds really well with the Hardy, and then over time, really the only thing that happens is it might fade slightly. It's not going to get the peeling from moisture with wood, and maintenance, it works pretty nicely.
So where are these on the picture? These are the shingles.
Yes, so the shingles are all along the second floor, which is this zone.
Where is that?
And that is at the front entrance, which is tough to see at this elevation.
So this is going to look like shiplap in the end? It's going to be just a flat? Is that
Correct.
the idea?
It's just regular lap siding.
And so everything else has more of a traditional shingle style?
So the style of this, I would consider it a combination of Adirondack / bungalow style, because we have a 3-foot overhang at the roof. The underside of the roof typically, and also when you walk in through this main porch area right here, you have some nice beadboard ceiling, which gives it some depth. And we're going to be painting this also a white color to match the trim on the building, but that would be at the underside of the roof and at the underside of the porch.
Painting that too? You said you're painting that too?
Yes.
Let's just go with our white.
Well,
White's on there.
the thing though, we are painting it white.
Okay.
But the white's going to match the trim.
Okay.
Behind us might yellow.
You're the architect.
Exactly. Do that. So it's actually good to paint.
That's PVC?
It is PVC.
Okay.
The Hardy, they don't make a nice thick material that has this depth, which is a sheet, so you don't get this nice wood look that's
Uh-huh.
like wood.
Sure.
So that's why.
Microphone. And the trim's all PVC as well?
Yeah.
All the window.
Okay.
Varied on projects. We've had some where we use hardy.
Sorry for everyone that can't hear him due to the microphone. That's my fault.
Sorry about that.
I apologize, but now, you got the mic.
So just to recap, the material that we'll be using, which is at the entrance here, and then as it goes along the side, where we do not have stone at the first floor, will be the cementitious lap siding, which is typical for houses, and then for residential houses. And at the second floor, we have also a cementitious shingle product that will also be painted. And then we have the stone as it's being passed around. And then next would be the beadboard, which is at the underside of all the roofs here, which overhang 3 feet, and then also at the porch entrance. And we do have some nice hanging, I'll say lantern-style fixtures, which is a nice gesture as you enter in for the first time into the entrance and to the reception and living room. The main front doors will be this finish, which is a nice wood finish as you enter. This is the double doors that are at the main entrance, and then also there's a vestibule door to get to the full interior. So this will be the wood finish for the doors. And then architectural style shingles for the roof, which is typical what you see in most houses as you go through neighborhoods throughout.
The dark gray asphalt.
This one right here. This has some colors that are going to be more towards the yellow. It has when you see it, you'll be able to take a look, and the colors are in line with the coloring that we're using for the lap siding and the shingles. Correct.
Mr. Chairman, if I may have just a couple of
And
questions.
then the last material is, this is the second floor decking, which is a composite decking, very durable, nice, has wood grain.
So imagine we're going to hear from the landscape architect about the patio or whatever courtyard in the back?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
so I'll pass on that for now. Gutters and leaders.
Yes.
What do you have in mind for that? I don't see it on the elevations.
Correct. So there will be gutters around the perimeter. The leaders will be in the inside corner to go down instead of being out along the front.
Painted, copper?
They come pre-finished white.
Okay. And what about those brackets? I mean,
They're
we do
not
any-
structural, but they're PVC brackets,
you
correct?
can't do anything a little more substantial, thank you. They just look like a couple of sticks thrown up. I mean, is there something that can be done there perhaps?
We could modify the trim and the siding at that also, which again, that I have seen that in past projects. But the brackets though, with the roof as it goes, transitions from the horizontal band at the second floor windows and goes to the roof, that was just all siding or trim, the scale of it would be off. So to introduce these brackets, which if you go to Trumbull, I think is a nice, sort of reduces the scale of that.
Oh, I like the brackets, I just wish there were better brackets than these. They look a little skimpy for the
Well,
the deep overhang and
They actually are.
everything else really makes it, and then suddenly you got these weak little
Correct.
things holding up the roof.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's good for me.
Any questions on the material?
Any questions? Commissioner Canelli?
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate first you sharing with us the materials to give us a better sense. I wondered it all in your commission, it doesn't sound like there was that much latitude, but was there any, how much effort was placed, at least in looking at the existing residential structures? Generally, obviously, there's a nod to this, but for example, some of the houses just down the street are, farmhouse style and things like that.
Correct.
My concern here, when we deal with the harmony test, there's a whole host of issues that we'll have to look at in terms of use and all, but it's also aesthetics ultimately.
Yes.
Can you talk at all about any influences at all specific to the site and the surrounding residential community that you feel is reflected in this design? Yeah, I mean, that's like, that's the current, street.
Correct.
But I look at, I'm just looking at this and, I don't know that I see that much of an anchor to, you know, what the neighborhood has. You know, one of the things that was nice in one of the presentations we had in the previous developer was the interest in trying to look at developer one of these kinds of sites, somewhat different, these kinds of facilities, was to look at the surrounding structures, even the structures they would replace, and see could they echo any of those elements. If there are some, can you talk about that other than the generic elements of fitting in a residential neighborhood? Did you
Yes.
look at the neighborhood at all?
Correct. So I've been visiting the site for the last, I'd say, year and a half. I've been many times to Starbucks up the street and driving around, and there's a lot of different styles of architecture, of course. I mean, that's sort of what you see in a lot of typical residential neighborhoods. You have styles where you have a simple structure like this, very, not a lot of depth, just front facade, windows. And you do have another piece that enhances or defines the front entrance. Beyond, you can see more of sort of a deeper overhang, which has the brackets. I've seen a lot of course, vinyl siding homes. It's sort of, it's tough to grab one style from houses because they're all over the place. So we try to use, again, a lot of the materials that you do see, again.
I hear you. It's more of a, ultimately, you're correct. It's a fairly much of a hodgepodge in terms of styles with, I mean, you could, but, you know, I'm just thinking right at the corner of Pansy there, the new homes, somewhat you'd kind of hope would set a tone. But let me ask you about something else that I'm concerned about is, when I would run up that hill past where this facility would be built, it's already a pretty tight, you know, fit with traffic and all for pedestrians. And this may be a question that is better answered by other members of the presentation team, but in your work as the architect here,
Yes.
was there any concern about the relationship between the building and the very, very busy roadway right there where people blow out of that intersection where there's a lot of stress because people, you know, get caught in the lights already going through Stilson? Was there any thought about how the building sits on the property to ensure, for example, I'm sure there's plenty of security, but that an individual who somehow could get through that security and wander off, you know, you don't have to wander very far in this facility to get right to a very dangerous road.
Yeah, correct.
So were you given in your charge as you developed these kinds of designs, anything where this design, while similar to Trumbull, took into account that the campus is butt up against a very busy, very kind of driver-stressed roadway there? Was that part of your mission? And if so, can you talk about what you did to try to...
Yes, in general. I mean, so if we reference Trumbull, I mean, that's up on the hill. It is a main road, but again, there's not a lot of... there's a residence down the street, but there are not a lot of lights, and then significant traffic, like you say here. There's another project very similar in Massachusetts that is University Station at Westwood, and that is in a brand-new development, extremely congested. I mean, we have restaurants, all kinds of amenities in the area.
And this kind of design was used?
Correct. It was very similar.
What are the strengths of that? What are the strengths of this design to help, you know, make sure that people, I mean, are there certain things in terms of where the doors are placed and things like that and how you've situated it?
Yes.
Can you talk about that, how it would at least create some distancing or slowing of an individual who might wander? Well, how is that done?
Can I just tag on to that? Because I have a similar question. It's not safety as much, but looking, and could you perhaps flip to the plan, the site plan? Because my first gut reaction is, and I know there's the conservation area in the back, but we just came off of looking at another applicant where one of our biggest concerns was that front left similar corner so close to the street. And I'm sure it's within the regulations, but boy, that looks awfully close to the street to me. And it looks like there might be room in the back to perhaps slide the whole thing back a little bit. I don't know what you're up against in the back, if there's a lot of ledge, if it's a problem, you know, who would even answer it, perhaps the landscape architect or...
Yes, they can speak on that, but just getting to that, the reason why it's oriented this way is because, again, it's also to reduce as you drive by or look from Stilson, to not have just one long facade. Having it at an angle makes it sort of nicer on the eyes, I'll say, that you'll be able to look and it's at an angle and you don't see this just one long volume. But pushing it back, I don't believe we can. I know Stan Tech can further comment on that. And then just following up on egress and safety. So the main entrance, again, is right here at the front porch. And then when you walk in, you go through the exterior double doors into the vestibule doors, and then right as you walk in, there is a reception and living space which has the fireplace. So anybody that goes in and out has to go through this location right here. Everything's alarmed, and then when you move into the households, there is no egress whatsoever out towards the street or towards the back. The only way you can egress out of a household is out into the secure courtyard or out through the household into the activities area, which is also the core. But again, all these doors leaving any household is fully alarmed, and we have staff on site and security. This is the fourth building I've worked on, but I've also toured a few others, and I've never heard of anybody, I'll say, getting out or escaping out and wandering out on the street, because really the only way you can get out is into the secure courtyard or through the core area where all the staff, and then the secure double doors to get out.
Can you describe how secure the secure courtyard is? Can you describe what are some of the features that ensure that the secure courtyard is secure, if that's your area? If not, I can wait.
Yes, there's a fence around the perimeter.
What kind of
And-
a fence is it? Like how tall and stuff? Is that something you don't, if you don't know the answer, don't
Well,
worry.
it's a stockade, just from
Stockade
reference,
fence?
it's a stockade,
6 feet?
8 feet tall.
8 feet tall?
Correct, is it 8 feet? Yes.
All right.
And then there's also 2 sets of doors that get in and out, because also this area, if there was an event of a fire, one of the areas for egress where the residents can stay is in this back area here, and if a fire truck was to come out and they needed to get out, they would go out through the gate, which is also secure, electrified, and the only way to get in and out of any of the exterior doors or the doors leaving the households that are alarmed are by card access.
So essentially, if we think of this as almost like an arrowhead, with the point, the head of the arrow being in this direction, going northbound on Stilson Road, the bottoms, kind of the outpoints, are areas in which there is not egress, so that the short way to Stilson Road in danger would be possible. You either have to come out from the back of the arrow, or you have to come out from the side. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a
Commissioner
question. You referenced the Trumbull property.
Yes.
Okay. The Trumbull property is basically on the Merritt Parkway and on a real commercial neighborhood, correct?
The street, right at Trumbull, across the street, there's a few commercial buildings, but once you go underneath the Merritt, it's a full residential neighborhood.
That's on the other side of the Merritt, and probably another 300 feet before you get into a residential neighborhood.
300, 200, it's in that range, correct.
Okay. And how much parking are we putting in Fairfield as compared to Trumbull, do you know?
Is it 50? 58.
Okay.
The answer to the question was 58 here, 60 in Trumbull.
Correct.
No, because, I mean, I'm looking at it, I mean, you have a long driveway entering Trumbull, it's set back, it's in a commercial neighborhood, where here we're pretty much putting this next to somebody's house. So you want us to make the comparison to Trumbull, where it's really a completely different neighborhood in Trumbull as it is compared to Fairfield.
Well, in Trumbull also, the reason why there's that long driveway, it's up on a pretty significant hill.
Right.
Correct.
What?
Oh, you're just saying the building is the template, correct.
What?
But again, we looked at this building for all the residential aspects, getting the material again that is typical what you see in single-family homes, adding the fireplace, which really wasn't needed, but we did that just to gesture more towards what you see in standard and typical homes as you drive through all the neighborhoods.
But the neighborhood is completely different, would you agree with that?
The neighborhood?
Yeah.
Actually, no. The neighborhood at the other side of Merritt, if you go up and around there, the homes are very similar. I mean, again, there's no
Yes, but
set...
we are dividing it by the Merritt Parkway, not by a driveway.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Just
Any
one
more
last-
before I head
One
out?
last quick one.
Sure.
I didn't make a note when you mentioned it in the initial presentation. The Trumbull facility is the exact same? It's an Alzheimer's dementia care facility?
Yes.
It's not an assisted living facility?
It's the same, yes.
Thank you.
Something?
Yeah,
Commissioner Barrett.
to go see the Trumbull facility, if we were to go see it, we would get an idea of what this building looks like, because it's supposed to be very similar, the
Correct.
architecture. That's what I think you answered.
Correct.
So our, benefit in maybe making a site visit to Trumbull would be to get a sense.
Oh,
of
absolutely.
beyond the boards and things you have here, just a real sense of the architecture.
And then really, when you do visit Trumbull, so at Trumbull, just quickly, if this is the main entrance here, there's a parking lot in this zone here, and viewing it, I would view it from this direction because, again, with a long drive at the bottom, it's such a steep slope up, you're looking up, and it seems a little bit, I'll say imposing because of just the height of the hill.
Okay.
Whereas this is just on level ground. So I would, walk in this area, take a walk around the back, and you can get an understanding of what all these households, the volumes as they go in and out, the material. The only difference from Trumbull and this project is just the color palette is slightly different.
Okay, that's good. I think that will be helpful.
Yeah.
And same construction style and materials and all that
Correct,
stuff, right?
correct.
And so we can make arrangements to do an individual site visit through staff, yes? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to try to finish our presentation and allowing time for public comment. So I'm going to bring up our landscape architect.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your timed outline. The questions are what they are. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Theo Kindelmans. I'm a landscape architect, site planner. I'm with Stantec Consultant. I am located in Boston, Massachusetts. I've been working on Alzheimer's assisted living senior housing communities for some 20-odd years now, and I think it's about three dozen or so that I've completed. I think you all went over a little bit of what I wanted to say anyways tonight here. As you know, the site's just over 4 acres. We have tried to do the site design as compact as possible by locating our building almost in the corner of the site, leaving just over an acre in a conservation restriction in the rear of the site. Conservation area will be enhanced as per our promises to the Inland Wetlands Commission. It will be enhanced, there will be additional planted. We are combining all 4 curb cuts on Stilson Road into one curb cut that's located almost centrally on our site. It does provide, by having the building slightly angled, we have only one area that is coming close to Stilson Road. It's 30 feet away from our property line, as is required by zoning. But by angling it and setting it up like this, we are providing for an entry court in a drop-off area that clearly defines sort of the more public area where visitors can park. Then around the corner here, facing the back of the buildings on Black Rock Turnpike. So this is all it's parking, loading, etc. on this side of our site. So this area for us sets the tone for the site as much as the residential area does. It also, we are also bound by what happens here, and so we decided that our the more area that's more focused on the use of our site is, and the servicing of our site happens here, just abutting the back Black Rock Turnpike. So we have a little recycling center here, we have a transformer here, we have a piece of cooling equipment here, and here are the doors for our loading. And so, trucks will come in here, do a hammerhead turn here in this area, and can leave the site like this. So all of our activity is happening between our building and the building on the Black Rock Turnpike. leaving the other side of the building for our courtyard that then becomes pretty well located as far as sun exposure goes. And that's, as you said, that's our quiet area of the site.
Can we go back to the service area for a moment?
Yeah.
The hammerhead that you referred to, how will that be identified? No parking signs, a striped zone for fire lane?
Right. It will be, it'd be no parking zone because, the building can't be serviced if.
Right, no, it's required. I mean, in order for the circulation to work and to comply with the regulations for, fire circulation and all, that has to be clear.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly stripe that out, and, we currently have it striped, in the corners here so that trucks can, make the radiuses as non-curbed areas, or we can certainly stripe the whole area as in don't park there.
Okay.
That's not a problem. As I said, the courtyard here is, it is the quiet part of the building. It has an 8-foot fence, 6-foot solid, 2-foot top. And the courtyard is, as in all of our communities, is highly developed. It's very highly landscaped because this is, our residents' backyard. So it's highly developed with activities. There's bird baths, there is bird houses, there's some gardens where they can garden. And I wanted to, I think Chris just mentioned that there's two gates in to the courtyard. And actually, it's one double gate, which is here, which is emergency egress out of the courtyard. There is. But otherwise, we'll just have a very highly developed, highly landscaped courtyard with 3 different patios. Patio at the main, our main function room, and then each of the wings has their own courtyard, own patio. That's a little bit differently identified.
Thanks. So in the back there, can you just talk a little bit about the emergency access for the fire truck and the paved area there? Yeah, exactly. How does a fire truck get onto that area from the street? Is there a curb cut?
There is a curb cut here, and it's a grasscrete driveway. It's non-paved, and it's for emergency only if there is anything.
What happens if there's 2 feet of snow on the ground?
It'll be cleared. We'll have to clear it. It's in our safety plan that we will have to clear it. Excuse me?
You said it's a grass street?
Grasscrete.
Grasscrete.
Oh, okay,
So it's the
okay.
the brick, so it looks
Right,
like
right.
it.
I know, it's absolutely, we would have to, we will have to clear that. That's it, yeah.
And there's no emergency fence there or anything. It's just a curb cut to the street with like an emergency access lane.
Right.
Right?
Right. We will be, further request of the town, we will be rebuilding the sidewalk all through our frontage. Lighting will be, and again, it's one of the advantages of locating the building as we have it here. All our lighting, will be here. It's 12 foot in the front, 20 foot high up there. It's fully cut off. It's LED lights. It's dark sky compliant. So we'll have in your package you'll find a photometrics plan showing that. We'll have some lights in the courtyard, but they will be half a dozen at most. Little wood post with just a bulb light in there, just to give some light in the courtyard. Our residents will never go out at night, but it's more to give some light from if you're inside and look outside, you have a bit of a twinkle.
That's a rule, that they're not permitted to be in
They will not go
outside
outside,
when the
correct.
sun goes down?
Correct.
Commissioner Barrett?
When they go outside, they can go outside during the day, outside of people, what keeps them on the property?
But this courtyard is totally secure.
Totally secure.
There is an 8-foot fence there.
8-foot
It's the
fence.
only place. They will never go there. There aren't any walking paths or around or in the back of our property. They will never go there. If they go out the front door, we have a sidewalk that leads to Stilson, and if they were to go for a walk, it will be always with somebody else. They will never go by themselves. The only way or where they can go outside is in the secure courtyard.
Secured court, they can go out by themselves in the secured
Correct.
courtyard, but not in the front.
Correct.
Okay, and, no, Commissioner Francis had something.
Where's the fence on this drawing? In front of the bushes or behind it, or what? I don't really see that.
The fence runs right there.
Way back there.
This black line.
Like to the
So
left.
that, yeah. So
Black
so
line
now-
that runs right here, yeah, you can see it through this, the greenery, that black line.
Right, it's like, right there, it's sort of like, it's this big curve, if you will.
It looks like this.
And I have the plan here, it's the same as you have there, it's, right there. This line, so this is the courtyard that's enclosed. And I think, oh yeah, there is some, as far as the landscaping goes, we submitted a revised landscaping plan that added some additional tree material, especially in the corners here, and evergreens, and it made them a bit bigger. We're lucky that we have a huge arborvitae sitting right on the corner, existing currently. There's an evergreen hedge here on that side that's currently existing that we want to keep. There's a really nice red maple sitting there that we're going to keep. So we're going to add the plant materials on the corner. These plants are spec'd, these trees are spec'd at a 12-foot height at time of planting, so it immediately gives some impact. We did a couple of Photoshop images, and I think you already saw one that shows a view, Google Street view from this angle, showing this corner of the building. There you have it. So this is our building. We have this big existing evergreen sitting right there, right behind our neighbor's house. There is a 5 or 6 evergreens that we're going to keep. But this is our building, photoshopped through to its
Mr. Chairman?
its height, etc. Photoshopped in.
Right.
We built actually a model out of it.
Wait, no, hold on, so what I'm seeing there is your building there?
This is our building.
That's
Correct.
your building, really?
Correct.
So as built, that's the view.
That's what it's gonna look like when I'm running up that, wow.
Right.
That isn't quite as looming as I thought. May I ask you a question?
It's a 2-story building.
Right, but it does, I mean,
Well, I think the benefit, what you're getting there is the benefit of the existing mature
trees.
trees
Right.
on
It's
the
true.
street
Yeah.
that, are not, they're on other, it's not on their property. They're not
That's true.
touching that stuff.
That's true.
Right.
2-story height means
Right.
that it's just gonna be
Right.
set back like a,
Mr.
Right,
Chair,
and that's the part of the building, as I already said, that's the part of the
Wow.
building that comes closest.
because that's what, I was asking staff if that was Photoshop or a house, I should know that better. But the chairman's indulgence, a question or two for you about the, your images of 5 and 10 years.
Right.
I'm very pleased with this, but I have to say, looking at the 5 and 10 first, these images, I assume since the deciduous trees have leaves, this is during a spring or summer view?
Right, and it's a straight-on.
Right,
view.
it is the
So
straight-on view,
You
but
don't see the screening, that's just really off the page almost, that's
Right.
what you see here. This is really a straight-on view.
Let me ask you this. My concern is that in some of the ways that Commissioner McAleese was concerned that he thought that some of the supports seemed a little sparse, I'm concerned not kind of, just a little weak in the effort to kind of break up the massing of the building. I'm concerned with these deciduous trees, even in their spring and summer months, not looking like they do, I wish there was more here. Again, a mix of evergreens or something, because you have seemed to have done an excellent job in terms of the height, or the architects are decent, or this design is pretty good, obviously, on the height, and there is this effort at bending the building to reduce massing, but you are going to still have a lengthy wall there.
Sure.
Because you're filling in the space from multiple houses. Can you at least talk to me about, before I even suggest any additions, what goes into this other than cost
in terms of, is there's issues like you can only have so many trees, or it's upsetting to the residents, or something because they feel hemmed in, but I want to understand why, because this does seem a little bit spare to me. I'd be more comfortable with more trees here, or trees that were going to, you know, hold their color throughout the year, like a pine
Right.
tree or something.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit, what goes into this? Is it simply you have a corporate design, that's it? Or did you look at this and why did you decide this was the appropriate amount? Because obviously it has nothing to do with nothing to do with like sight lines or anything, because these are all off the right of way. If I'm in the driveway here, I can see fine. So your choices here against the building wouldn't have anything to do with sight lines. So what was the thinking that went into these choices? Is it strictly decorative, or?
It's almost decorative. I mean, I like the building, so I don't
Right.
necessarily want to screen it.
Okay.
But if there's another opinion, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm a landscape architect. I plant trees
Right.
for a living,
Right.
so bring it on.
No, my only concern is I'll tell you what it is.
Here all night.
Just as, look, the public hearing is an opportunity for us to kind of work with you a little bit on this in terms of what can be done, in terms of what might, you know, help it harmonize with the community.
Yeah.
I don't know how familiar you are with Fairfield, but for example, there's a senior living facility on Villa Avenue on the east side of town. And one of my concerns about that facility, with no knock on the operators or anything else, is it always has struck me, it's right by a car wash and some other buildings, but it's right on the corner, and it always has seemed very bare to me. And as a result, it emphasizes the kind of institutional otherness of the structure, even though it was built, obviously, to kind of fit in with homes in the area. So when I look at this, I think to myself, you know, from an architectural perspective, you're trying to keep it down, you're trying to, you know, make it an angle, but it does strike me that wherever you could, there may be some value in beefing this up a little bit, at least in terms of some trees that don't lose all their leaves all the time. And, you know, I don't want to become like, I'm afraid I'm becoming like the Johnny Appleseed of pine trees for assisted living, but which I didn't want. But it does strike me that a couple of evergreens additional here, there's one or two, or arborvitae, or something that would just break up the line of the building. Might be something to consider. I don't know where we are on this. There may be a lot more serious concerns we'll hear about, but something for you to consider. That's all I'm saying as we work through the process.
I'm more than happy to add some more trees. I thought it was...
But there's nothing, well, I guess what I'm saying is there was nothing in your charge that limited you in terms of, hey, you have to have this much space for people to be able to look through the window, or nothing. Okay, just wanted to check in.
You know, I don't want to plant evergreens too close to the building, obviously, so, but close to the street is fine. I deliberately here, there is a bit of an issue with the sideline here. What I did do here is, we have almost a hedge-like of low evergreens, just to take off the curse of the vehicles when you look in, but then I would like to see in and see the, you know, a nice drop-off, and you'd like to show off the front door. But if this part of the building then gets screened, I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, thank you. That's all pretty much I have.
Any other questions for the landscape architect? Thank you.
I'm going to bring up our traffic engineer, Chris Mohican. I would show you that in your handout are...
Sorry, I can't understand. Can you say that again?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to bring up our traffic engineer, Chris Mohica. I just want to point out to you that 4 sheets in from the back of your handout are the boards that he's going to use if you want to refer to those.
Thank you.
Good evening to the commission. My name is Chris Mohica, and I'm a traffic engineer with Stantec, and I prepared the traffic impact study that is part of the application that's for review tonight. I briefly wanted to go over the traffic impact study that was part of the application, kind of lead you through some of these outlying assumptions, how we got to the overall conclusion. I know that several assisted living facilities have been prepared in the past, so you might have heard previous testimony from other firms in terms of how they developed it, and just want to be sure that you just understand what went into the overall study. Just overall existing conditions, the map is on the screen and it was talked about before. But overall, we're looking at 3 intersections in the area, and in addition to that, the new driveway entrance/exit for the proposed development. Obviously, for the Stilson Road corridor, we're looking at the intersection at Black Rock Turnpike, the intersection at Stilson Place, and the intersection at Mayfair Road/Pansy. Obviously, there are concerns with existing levels of traffic and congestion, especially towards Black Rock Turnpike, and how that relates to the proposed driveway entrance. The one thing I want to stress in the beginning, as we go through it, and you can see in terms of the incremental volumes on this first board over on the left, based on the trip estimates from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is the standard protocol for research in terms of potential land uses, so for assisted living facilities, those projections indicate that a total of 13, 21, and 26 vehicle trips are projected to be made to and from this facility, this community, during the weekday morning, weekday evening, and Saturday midday peak periods. Those,
So,
go ahead.
to that end, how many employees are here? What are their shifts, and how many cars do you expect relative to the, employees?
So in terms of developing the trip estimates are done based on employees. We decided to use occupied beds, assuming full occupancy, and the trip rates associated with that.
But these people are extreme care, memory care, that aren't going to drive.
Correct, yes, but those trip estimates take into account the employees and the other members that access the facility for those purposes.
Oh, so not like an apartment building with number of beds?
No, this is occupied beds in an assisted living facility.
I see.
So that land use, essentially the comparison is the average number of occupied beds based on daily trips, and that incorporates employee activity to and from the site.
And in an assisted living facility environment?
Yes.
Okay. And if he's got the data there, I'd be really interested to know and not have to find it. I know it's here somewhere, but how many employees, what are the shifts, and what is your expectation there?
In terms of the shifts, right now the shifts are typically, the main shift is from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then you have 3 p.m. to 11, and then 11 to 7. And in terms of the peak weekday, you have a maximum amount of staff of about 28 employees, and in terms of over that time frame, you also have about 5 or 6 visitors and some aides.
So for each shift, we have 28 employees?
Yes, for the weekday. Those are the weekday numbers.
Commissioner, if you look at tab 2 of what I gave you tonight, that's where the data that Mr.
Thank
Mohica
you.
is referring to. Not the September 1st, tonight's material. It says November 15th on the cover, tab 2.
I didn't have a chance to look at the material that was submitted tonight. Second page? No.
Yeah.
Tab 2, I'm there, at the bottom. 28 max staff, 6 family, 3 private. So you're talking about weekday, 34, 37. So,
21 free spots, basically, right?
say again?
It's only during the day.
Right, that's the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then, of course, obviously, those numbers will vary over time. But, so using the ITE as a surrogate for reality, we see some variances between what the projections are and what, a facility will actually bring. I mean, do you see, with the facts and data that you have with respect to this facility, that the ITE projections are reasonable? Or do you see anything that's particular to this application for this proposal that might cause you to, any concern that the ITE estimates won't be accurate?
So typically what we do for any development, regardless of the land use type, is we try to see if there are existing prior uses that we can rely upon. But by default, we always refer to the IT trip generation manual because the IT manual is developed based on data from different studies in different areas. So it's a little bit more weighted in terms of the data that comes together Whereas if you don't have, so this information that you have here, it shows 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 28 staff. From this estimate, though, I can't discern what the percentage of auto trips versus transit trips are, so I don't know how they're getting here. What ITE essentially does is that they get survey data from different sites. So they understand the overall trip making, and then they also get data in terms of the proportion of employees, how many of them actually drive or they carpool, and they come up with the estimate of vehicle trips. And that is more indicative of different areas of the country. So some studies are local, some of them are a little bit more, other states, things of that nature. But it's supposed to provide a bit of a representation in terms of the average vehicle trip making that's projected to go to and from the site.
Right. And so, really what I'm saying is, you could have a commercial building, which has, I don't know, we just had the Equinox gym come in with an application, right? So somebody might come in with a gym, and they may estimate that it's going to be 10 trips. But if you were to say it's an Equinox gym, we know from experience that that is just going to get a ton of volume, right? Using that as a total hypothetical, right? Is there anything about this application, the facts here, that would give you pause, cause any pause or concern that the numbers from the ITE in terms of the estimates are at all, inaccurate? Do you expect less volume here for any reason, or more volume here for any reason, based upon what you know about this application?
I think the comparisons between the IT trip generation manual and what's depicted here in terms of what's in the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. are all in the ballpark. In terms of what you essentially get to and from the site, you're talking about in the realm of, 13 trips in the morning, which is a little bit on the light end. And keep in mind, too, we're talking about 7 a.m. as a potential shift change. When we look at things, we try to be conservative with the analysis to say, what's the impact of the overall peak hour traffic? And typically, for this area, your peak hour is probably more of a 7:30 to 8:30 towards the latter part as people are going to and from 95.
Do we know that? Did you look at that?
Yes, I did. So
Okay.
in terms of overall peak hours for the site, and just bear with me for 1 second, 7:30 to 8:30 is the morning peak hour for this area.
Okay.
So essentially what those trip making estimates show for this site, the ones that we just reviewed, the 28 staff, that's assuming that's happening exactly at 7 o'clock. So that's outside of the peak period, that's occurring with an overall lower base of traffic. The IT trip estimates try to take into account the AM peak hour of the generator, which truly anticipates what the peak hour generator is typically for an assisted living site, but being mindful of other other uses in the area.
Right. Now, what about the school, which is local, right? I mean, this is very proximate to a school.
Yes.
In terms of coordinating with the school bus routes and the shift changes and that kind of thing. Just by way of background, in another facility that we had in town, another application, the applicant, recognizing it was close to an elementary school, coordinated the shift changes with the, bus drop-off and pickup so that we weren't having a confluence of, traffic from different sites crowding the streets at the same time. Did you look at that at all? I don't know.
Well, typically, so what we try to 7 to 9, just briefly, for the peak periods that we analyzed, 7 to 9 a.m. was the morning, 4 to 6 for the evening, and 12 to 2 for the Saturday midday. For the weekday morning and the weekday evening, we tried to be cognizant of when the greatest amount of traffic overall in the area is. Now, typically in the morning, that coincides with the school pickup and drop-off as they're getting to the schools, but also keeping in mind that certain schools have different start times, and depending on the schools, they might, especially if it's a high school, for instance, and I know you have elementary schools here, but at high schools, for instance, they have staggered, entry times for students. So you don't have everybody congregating at once. But the whole purpose of selecting the 7 to 9 peak period and ultimately settling on a 7:30 to 8:30 is to try to conservatively start with a base to say, this is the highest level of traffic that you have in the area. And then as part of the traffic impact study, overlay the projections of trips that are projected to the site onto the highest amount of traffic that you have in the area, so you can really try to get a sense of the true impact if, say, the projected trips to and from the proposed development happen at 7:30 to 8:30.
Could I ask a question about your methodology? Because we understand that, we
Yeah.
have folks come in all the time. In your report, it dates the date for weekday AM peak hour, 2017, no build conditions. Is it August 5th, 2016 was when you submitted the report, or is that when you did the underlying study of the area? When was that? I missed it if not.
So for existing conditions, the data was first collected in May of 2015, and that was comprised of turning movement counts at the intersections and ATR counts, tube counts for 7 days.
Okay.
What we did is we came back out in March of 2016 because
Okay.
there were some underlying concerns about site distances at the site entrances.
There was what?
And site distances based on the exit from the proposed driveway entrance.
Okay.
So what we did in March 2016 was we counted another 7 days still along Stilson Road and compared the 2016 volume data versus the 2015 volume data.
Right.
And what we found was that the volumes were more or less comparable. And what we elected to do to be more conservative was to rely upon the 2015 count data, because when we look at future year conditions, that would account for an additional year of background traffic growth within the study area. So essentially, we're adding more traffic growth, and when we look at the future year conditions, we're looking at a higher level of traffic if the project were not to happen.
So your calculation then was based on studies done in two periods in which school was open during the weekday.
Under ideal
Right,
weather conditions.
Under ideal weather conditions, and also you chose to err on the side of heavier traffic conditions for your baseline before adding what you consider to be the
Yes.
ITE estimates for this type of construction.
Correct, because if we relied on 2016 traffic data, then
would have been lighter.
there would be lighter, there would be less growth added, and adjustments would have to be made from the 2015 data to the 2016 data, and that just became a little bit too much. We rather just wanted to rely on the prior data.
Excellent. I got you next. Commissioner Ellis.
I got it. Your peak hours that you have here is 7:30 to 8:30?
Yes.
Okay, but you're showing that the staff change is going to be at 7 a.m.
Yes.
So why didn't you check the peak hours when the staff is going to be coming in and out? And it looks like you're going to generate roughly 56 trips in that time period there.
Well, the reason why we didn't look at 7 a.m. was because of the fact that you would have a higher level of staff, but you have a lower base. So essentially what you're going to be saying is you're going to be looking at the impact of potentially 28 to 30 employees coming in where traffic levels are much lower at 7 a.m.
Well, 7 a.m., I don't know if you live in Fairfield, the roads are busy.
Yes, but the 7 days...
People are using that road going down to 95, people are going to the schools, the buses are going to the high school, the train station. So that 7 o'clock, 6:30 is when it really starts, maybe 6:45 in town, 6:30. So now we want to add 56 trips into this driveway at 7 a.m. To me, it would have made sense to check the traffic at 7 a.m., not test it at 7:30 after the 56 trips have already taken place.
And I appreciate that sentiment. What I wanted to say was we did 7-day ATR counts over a 24-hour period, and the counts from 6:30 to 7:30 along Stilson Road are lighter than the counts from 7:30 to 8:30 in terms of order of magnitude.
I understand, but I want to know what a post-build is going to be at 7 a.m., not at 7:30 to 8:30, when the staff is already in the building.
We could do that. The difference that you're going to see is you're going to have a lower base of traffic that you're going to be comparing level of service against. So your overall conditions on the roadway network without the project are overall better because you have lower levels of traffic.
But you're not taking, see, this is kind of like a false data here, because what I'm seeing here is, you're saying my 217 build traffic study is not taking into account the trip generations that are going to be caused by this place. And I want to see, with the trip generations caused coming and going at this project at 7 a.m., that's what I want. That's the post-build. Not, 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. when the staff is already in the building and nobody's coming in and out of the place. I want to see what's going to happen when the people coming in and out of this place.
Well, that's why we use the IT trip generation data that was based off of the AM peak hour generator, and that was compared against the overall AM and PM and Saturday midday peak hours based off of those peak periods.
I don't want to make your case, very, oh, sorry. Okay.
Commissioner Canelli?
I'm sorry, and I apologize.
Barrett's-
Only because I want
How come you
to,
get to go though?
no, I was just trying to follow up on what Jerry said, that's all. I'm sorry. I just want to hold the point so that we don't, I want to make sure I understand the point, which is this. What you're saying to Commissioner and to the Vice Chairman is that you did a range of times where you looked at traffic in this area. But the point was, you built into this, as part of your due diligence, that you picked the time that when you added your ITE base trips would be the heaviest traffic. Is that the point? Is that fair? That you weren't hiding from 7 o'clock.
We're not trying-
Or 7:30. It's that you picked the point where the traffic would be heaviest to then add on to what, to truly
I'm
get...
not worried about when the traffic is the heaviest on Stilson Road. I want to know what the chip generation is going to look like
right,
coming
okay.
in and out of this building.
I
That's
think
what
that-
I'm getting at.
Okay, all right, well, can I...
Okay, Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah. Mr. Mojica?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. So you've got that up there, which just has a straight across level of service D, at the key intersection, Stilson Road and Black Rock Turnpike. Peak hour morning, afternoon, Saturday, it's D. The build conditions are still D. There's no degradation in terms of a letter. Table 9, is that the right table where it's comparing the no-build and build in more detail in terms of the delays?
Yeah, I believe table 9 is Saturday midday, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so that, table 9 has those conditions, and, that's Saturday peak hour. Well, for any of them,
Yes.
if I look at that, what I'm interested in, again, as Mr. Alessi said, when I look here, it's the change in volume here. I mean, and a couple of these turning movements are still an F. There's one that's it's an F, it's still an F, but
Yes.
it's worse. But you have a change in delay, maybe of a few seconds, but the change in volume here is only like 3 cars. Am I reading it right? Maybe a total of 12 cars?
Correct, because
throughout the peak
those
hour.
volumes are broken down based on, lane
so-
groups at the intersection.
So again, like to Mr. Alessi's point, during the week, I understand you capture the peak hour, but the impact of when the shift change is already made and you've got a peak hour, he's interested in what the impact is, as am I, at 7 a.m., which to me, it may not be the peak, but, adding 56 trips to that, what is that going to do? Is that going to degrade a level of service at that time, maybe in terms of delay higher than just this few seconds you have here? You know what I'm saying?
No, I
Your
agree with-
impact to
I agree
traffic
with
at,
what
say,
you're-
at 7 a.m. seems more pertinent than your impact when you're only projecting like five trips or something. And regardless if that's not the peak hour of the day, that's a traffic delay impact, and that's what we're interested in assessing.
Okay, and I appreciate that. What I was trying to convey, and I know I'm hitting the wrong point because we're getting a lot of back and forth, but what I was trying to convey was, looking at the previous other sites, that the guidance set forth in those studies looked at those peak hours, so it was following the same methodology in that regard. I appreciate the sentiment about 7 o'clock. We could definitely look at that and revise that accordingly to reflect trip generation happening at a 6:30 to 7:30 and overlay those impacts so that you're looking at the true impact of a shift change. That's fine.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Commissioner Francis?
And usually, when we have these type of facilities, we get exact numbers of the 28 people or 7 to 3, and there's a different number from 3 to 11, and there's a very different number from 11 to 7. It isn't 28.
You wanna?
Real quick. Michael Glenn with National Development. The 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. is approximately 15 employees. And then overnight, it's 5 or 6.
5 to 6?
Yeah, so that shift change will be approximately 30 comings and goings.
Okay.
5 leaving, 25 to...
And if there was a circumstance where the school pickup and drop-off overlapped with your shift changes, would you be amenable to tweaking?
Absolutely.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. So you got an awful lot of peppering with questions as you started your presentation. I'm sure that you had some things you wanted to tell us.
Well, yes, I kind of went through the whole existing conditions in terms of the peak hours that were surveyed and things of that nature. I did want to go into the crash analysis part of it, because I do appreciate that safety is a big concern in the area. We did look at the latest 3-year data that's available because of the fact that Stilson Road is a state road. And the latest available data pretty much covers from 2012 to 2014, year to year. And I just went on the crash repository this morning just to see, and they've only updated it another 3 months. So that, in terms of overall latest available data, within 3 months, that's essentially what I was able to pull.
Right, and I'm sure you've heard that there's been a fatality, not right there, but down the Black Rock Turnpike.
Yes, I did read about it.
Yeah. It's interesting, the letter we got from Mr. Prenser at the Economic Development Commission said, "The Commission is sensitive to the fact that the upper reaches of Stilson Road are already congested, particularly at peak times, and that the signalized intersection at Stilson Road and Black Rock Turnpike operates at a suboptimal level of service. While the Commission," meaning the Economic Development Commission, "does not anticipate that an assisted living memory care facility will generate much additional traffic so as to exacerbate these conditions, we freely confess that such matters are beyond our area of expertise," blah, 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 blah. Would you consider the operation of this intersection to be suboptimal?
Level of service D in an urbanized area is considered acceptable.
Are there
Now the ITE,
please, members of the audience, please, it's really not appropriate. We're trying to do a serious job here.
So the ITE manual for land development normally states that level of service A through C is considered acceptable. But in recent reviews of environmental impact statements for the state for different actions for other projects in the area, Connecticut DOT has stated that level of service A through D is acceptable for urban areas, and that includes Fairfield County.
And that was in the context of an environmental impact study?
Yes, for a separate project altogether.
I see.
It was a generic statement on just evaluating the metrics of level of service and what's considered acceptable versus not acceptable in an urban environment.
So in the manual, the sort of the statement of authority, acceptable levels of services A through C, but in another project relating to an environmental impact study, Connecticut DOT made the statement sort of in the abstract that level of service A through D should be considered acceptable. Am I recapturing that?
You are, and the assessment of level of service A through D in urban areas is not only Connecticut DOT. There are other urbanized areas that have adopted that same statement only because of the fact that you have a higher amount of density and you have a higher amount of population in an area, so higher levels of traffic. So there's a little bit more tolerance to what's acceptable versus not acceptable.
Which basically, I think, amounts to a recognition that as we've become more dense and we've evolved to simply tolerate additional burdens on the roadways, and so now a little bit more of a wait time is or should be acceptable. Is that a good way to characterize it? I mean,
that's a fair way to assess it. Yes.
So, all right, I would be interested to see some of the authority, the references that you make to the DOT stating that level of service A through D is acceptable.
Okay, we can definitely provide that to you.
Thank you very much. So there are going to be delays, additional delays. I understand, your data suggests that the number of cars is likely less than we or others might think that it will be, based on ITE, et cetera, and that the delays are not going to cause a different letter to be assigned, right? How much is the delay, the worst delay that would occur? The The increase in delay is what I'm driving at. What's the worst that would happen?
The highest increase, I believe, was about 5 or 6 seconds, and that was along the westbound Black Turnpike left turn approach onto southbound Stilson Road, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. 5 or 6 seconds?
Yes.
And how much is the incremental change that would be necessary to move that from a D to an E? You know what I mean? What's the range that would need to push it to the next level? How far in the range of D are we? Did we push it just up to the edge of E?
No,
Or
we're
are we
not.
far from that?
We're not in the fringe area between a D or an E.
Okay. All right, good. Other questions on this subject? Commissioner
I
Francis?
wanted to ask about the urbanized. What is the level below urbanized?
The
I'm
level,
not sure I want to be called an urban area.
well, the classification is always urban or rural, just very generic.
Okay.
Just, it's a very generic classification.
Commissioner Kennelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mojica, it may well be that maybe you just use data provided by ITE, but I'm looking at Figure A, projected vehicular trip distribution, and it appears that out of the facility that you have the distribution out of the proposed facility to be 50% north and southbound on Stilson on the state road, state highway. How did you decide on this being an absolutely even split? My concern being that if the traffic, in fact, is in actuality turns out to be more northbound, I would say that the likelihood of even a greater traffic hassles in this area will be significantly raised. So how did you come up with this idea built into your model that 50% would travel southbound, 50% would travel northbound? Is this something based on your observations, or is it somehow that you have worked out by previous facilities, or are you just simply applying some ITE standard?
It's based on a combination of judgment based off of field observations, just getting an understanding of the generic travel patterns to and from the area. In addition to the data collection process, we do spend time out there during the periods and the middle parts of the day during the times that things are surveyed, so we can truly get an understanding of the area. We're not trying to just collect the data and sit in the office. We're really trying to perceive what the traffic is, ride the traffic, drive around the area, understand and get a better feel for the congestion.
Well, let me ask you, I see what you're saying, but let me ask you this, as you tried to do that, were you in discussions with your client about where they anticipated they would find workers to do this work, for example?
No.
Because it would strike me, for example, that if I were coming from Bridgeport, say, to work in this facility, I'm likely to travel northbound to Black Rock Turnpike to head eastbound to Bridgeport as opposed to traveling southbound, but I mean on Stilson. Well, so there was no effort made to kind of analyze where the staff might be coming from or anything like that, where they would be drawing.
No, because the problem with that is that your staff could change, so one day to the next.
Right.
Those patterns might change because you might have an influx of staff that's more or less to and from the south, maybe a few months later that changes. The process in determining the percentages is really just looking at, and also I discussed it with Connecticut DOT as well, just understanding what would be acceptable for patterns based on any other developments that they considered in the area as well.
And what was their take? That just 50-50
They considered this to be acceptable.
The 50%?
In terms of the overall distribution, because the distribution gives merit to potential traffic to the Merritt Parkway, potential traffic to Bridgeport, perhaps by Black Rock Turnpike,
right,
and also potential traffic going down via Stilson to I-95.
It's a haul down there. I mean, like, to come to where this location is via 95, you're going to take yourself out of the way.
Of course.
One of the reasons why I was curious whether or not there was any effort to provide you with estimate, like when a facility like this is going to be developed, where you're going to get your workforce, is that in past cases, we have had applicants before us who have talked about
X number of our employees we anticipate using public transportation. So they had begun to think about what the profile of the workforce would be, the kind of caregivers they would need here. But that wasn't something that was discussed with you. The profile of the workforce was not that. This is simply the application of what the models you talked with DOT about.
Yeah, this was just using the standard methodology and determining what would be an appropriate trip distribution for a development in this area.
Right.
Not being independent of the land use, just saying if you were to analyze the development of this area, how people would typically get to and from the site.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, one last thing.
Well, I still have a couple more questions
Oh, I'm sorry,
myself.
go.
But no, I'm cautioning you not to set expectations that it was just one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Related to what Commissioner Kennelly was just talking about, either, and not to sound flip, but, you know, we all live here. Did by chance you happen to go into the parking lot behind, what is it called now, the Little Pub, and try to make a left turn out of that parking lot at any time of day? It's next to impossible.
Any little pub, it's next to impossible.
But this one in particular?
Yes.
You know, this is just a few hundred feet down from there. And, you know, I would almost be inclined to say, if you could come up with some kind of restriction on right turns only out of that parking lot, it might be a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, well, that then would, that then directs all the traffic down,
I know.
the subsidiary road and not to Black Rock Turnpike. I don't think that's a...
But that's going to be an impossible left turn out of this facility.
And you're going to have traffic coming out of this facility and the little pub, all going a short distance. Look, one of the reasons that it sort of works is because it's so close to Black Rock Turnpike, and it's adjacent to more commercial areas, but being so close to the intersection also poses its problems for that reason, right? So...
Agreed.
Good?
I'm finished, yes, thanks.
All right. So, I wanted to talk to you about sightlines.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, sightlines?
Sightlines.
Yes.
I'm looking at page 33 of 34 of your report, where you summarize the sightline issue being 200 feet less than the 500 feet required. And I was hoping that you could talk about that.
Yes, so in regards to that, we did reach out to District 3 because it is a state road, and they pretty much have oversight in terms of overall issues with efficiencies and sightlines. And we've been coordinating with them, and they understood the site impediments coming out of the proposed access way, especially since it's close to an existing curb cut for one of the existing houses. And they advised us to work with the existing site impediments and try to maximize site distance to as much possible. That's the latest directive that we've received from them.
Okay. Well, that's not very helpful. Is that in writing anywhere?
I don't know.
Do we have that feedback from Connecticut DOT? Nothing's in
It was
writing.
verbally sent, stated to us, I want to say like a month ago, about a month ago, give or take.
Okay. So the effort that they're asking you to undertake is to coordinate with the adjoining landowner with respect to the tree and the business with respect to the sign and trim back and try to get as much sightline distance as you can? Is that what I'm understanding? Is that fair?
No, the effort is essentially to pretty much create the site plan to try to maximize the amount of available site distance that you have. The impediments to the north are assigned for an existing medical facility to the north, as well as a utility pole.
It's a pole. I thought it was a tree. It's a utility pole?
I believe a tree as well.
A tree, a utility pole, and a sign.
Yes.
Well, one of those is not going anywhere anytime soon. That'd be the utility pole. It's also relatively narrow.
Tree ain't going anywhere.
So is there a request here that we somehow allow a deviation from the required sightline calculations in our regulations? I don't understand. So our regulations require there to be certain sightlines for safety reasons, and your application presents us with an explicit finding that your site plan does not meet those regulations. So what are we supposed to do with that?
I would have to defer to Phil. I don't know if you want to speak to it, because I know you were a little bit more involved with that.
For the record, Phil Katz, associate with Stantec, civil engineer. We had met with the state, that's their property, their road that we're going on to. The issue with that is they would say that we need to do as best as we can. They would work with us. They said if we need to help get an easement on the adjacent property, they would help us do that. But they said do the best you can in trying to get a site distance for that speed. Now, that speed that we're using is 45 miles an hour, which is a pretty fast speed on there. We think that's a little excessive at the intersection, but because you're probably not going to be able to get to 45 miles an hour. That's based on further down Stilson, where, you know, you
Well,
could...
that's the posted speed limit though, right? 45. Is it?
No, I don't think, I think it's the design speed.
Posted, so that's actual, that's an actual, where's the 45 coming from?
That is the 85th percentile speed based off of speed data that was collected in March.
Right, which is why I'm asking you the question, because you're saying it's a little bit high for the intersection, but the fact is that that's an accurate number based upon speed of vehicles on the roadway, because the
Yeah,
calculation...
that was south of the intersection. It's not right where this is. You know, where they took the speed data is further away from the site.
It's south of Stilson Place.
Right.
So, okay, well, I'm just saying that the application in this regard fails to meet our regulations. So unless you come in with a speed count, a speed analysis on the other side of the driveway, going in the other direction, and present us with calculations that show that the minimum required sight line is something different from what you have in your materials today, we're going to be confronted with a significant challenge in this application. And I don't know how else to say it.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
Okay.
We'll
Very
work
good.
with the DOT and come up with that.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have anything on this?
Pretty much summed it up.
I don't have any other questions, so if you have anything else in your presentation, feel free, and otherwise...
I think for the sake of time, I think there's some comments that need to be incorporated, and we'll take that into consideration.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
No, come on, guys. Stop.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Philip Katz, associate with Stantec Consulting. Our office is at 55 Church Street in New Haven. Licensed PE, 33 years of site design experience. I'm just going to quickly go over the drainage for this site. With regard to other utilities, we did get approval from the WPCA for connecting into the sewer system. We got that last year. There's sufficient water and electric and gas that's available on Stilson Road. So on the drainage design, we tried to design something as low impact design, kind of mimic the natural condition, which allows water to percolate into the ground. This site plan, L200, shows, let me just go over some of the features here. Underneath the parking lot on this side, the commercial side, there's subsurface chambers which allow the water to go back into the ground. There's also a detention area over on this side, which will allow water to percolate into the ground and also clean any water from sediment. There's also, in the front parking lot, there is a subsurface system there, which overflows into a basin here, which will again clean the stormwater from any sediment and debris. And then there's another one in the rear of the property before it discharges into wetland. It's again a subsurface system. These consist of chambers They're a hollow bottom, they're perforated, and there's stone around them, which allows water to percolate into the ground. So all that will percolate into the ground. Any overflow will then go and flow into the rear of the property. This design had been reviewed in the Conservation Commission, had been approved, had been reviewed by engineering, and also had been approved during the Conservation Commission meetings. It was submitted again as part of the P&Z package. Again, it was reviewed by Laura Pooley in engineering, and she found the design to be acceptable. The drainage design meets all town of Fairfield criteria for the 2 to the 100-year storm events. We have the post-construction flow being less than the pre-construction flow, less than or equal to in all cases. It also meets the more stringent requirements for the Conservation Commission, which is to reduce the 10-year post-construction flow to the 2-year pre-development rates. And again, this also meets the DEP Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. So we think with regard to drainage that we've addressed all the concerns, and the town seems to be satisfied with our design.
Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Kennelly?
So it seems like you've got a lot more impermeable surface area than you had in pre-build. I assume this is through mechanical devices in the ground that you're able to reach these levels?
Yeah, these are
Otherwise,
chambers.
it seems like you're adding a heck of a lot more impermeable surface area on the site than you had before.
Right.
So this is basically done through engineering?
Yes, there's below, let me show you this other plan, 3L. So you can see on this plan, L300, this shows the chambers that are located below the parking here, and also below the courtyard in the back. So that's how you're able to achieve that. And again, these are fiberglass chambers that they're perforated and allows the water to percolate down into the ground. So our design, when we do the 2 to 10 year storm, we're required to look at the 2-year, our 10-year development, which with all the build has to be less than the 2-year storm, and that's with, when we do the existing condition, the town, both the engineering department and wetlands, does not give you credit for existing impervious surfaces that are on the ground. So we have to look at this, if we're comparing it to the existing condition, as if it's just a natural grass field. So it's very, very restrictive in that sense. So we were able to meet that to the satisfaction of the Engineering and Conservation Commission.
It's just a lot of engineering to make sure that you're...
It was a lot of engineering.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a lot of engineering, believe me.
It's downhill to those houses below you.
Yes, yes.
But, all right, thanks, I just wanted, thanks.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much.
Commissioners, the last expert segment is Chris Karen, our appraiser, and I refer you to the last 2 pages of the 11 by 17 handout.
The last 2 pages of the handout you gave us tonight. Of this one. Got it. Thank you. And your report is the evaluation, right? Got it. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the commission, good evening. For the record, my name is Chris Karen. I'm partner of the appraisal firm Karen and Fazio, located at 1129 Post Road here in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm a state licensed certified real estate appraiser. I hold the Appraisal Institute's MAI designation, and I've been valuing property in Fairfield for the past 27 years. My qualifications are included in the addenda of the report I prepared for your reference.
I was asked to perform a real estate impact study in order to determine whether or not the proposed 64-unit assisted living community will have any impact on the market value of neighboring properties. And prior to doing this, I conducted physical inspections of the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood. I studied the assessor's maps and zoning maps of the town and for the subject property and the surrounding properties. I reviewed the field cards for the subject site and surrounding properties, and I also studied the site design and architectural plans that were presented this evening and the traffic study. I also performed a paired sales analysis, which I'll go into briefly. Based on my analysis, it's my opinion that the proposed assisted living community will have no negative impact on the market value of neighboring properties and will not change the character of the subject neighborhood. I'm going to briefly go over the report, which contains detailed descriptions of both the subject site characteristics and the neighboring properties. You'll find photos of the neighboring properties as well as descriptions of all the neighboring properties in the report. The location map is up on the screen. The location map is here, which also is on page 16 of my report. You guys are pretty familiar with the location. I'll just briefly go over it. To the north, Black Rock Turnpike, that's a strip commercial artery. Typical occupancies such as restaurants, fast food restaurants, grocery stores, banks, retail stores, clothing stores. At the intersection of Stilson and Black Rock Turnpike, there's a little pub and Posters Hardware, which little pub was just added. There's a Wells Fargo Bank, a Bank of America Bank on the other corner, and then a mobile gas station on at that intersection. And the subject also abuts two commercial properties that are on Black Rock Turnpike to the north. 414 Stilson Road is a 7,600 square foot office building, and 2181 Black Rock Turnpike is an 86,000 square foot retail center. That's the center with the Old Navy and the Gap in it. To the east and to the south of the subject property, they're primarily residential neighborhoods. The homes typically range in size to 1,000 to 2,000 square feet. Site sizes are about 0.15 acres to about a half acre. Across the street at 427 Stilson Road is one exception. There's a 21,000 square foot office building. And also the Osborne Hill Elementary School is located to the south on Pansy. And to the west of the property, you'll see on the maps there's a large green area. That's a wetland area, which is associated with the Mill River. And the wetlands extend to Pansy Road, and west of Pansy Road is a single-family residential neighborhood. So, in general, the subject property is in a transitional neighborhood. To the north of the property is a heavily developed strip commercial area. To the south of the property and to the east is a residential neighborhood. And this type of transitional location is where you would expect to find uses such as an assisted living facility. I've referenced to the landscape plan. I looked at the proposed development in terms of its relationship and orientation to the surrounding neighborhood. And you could see from the landscape plan that the parking situated away from the residents. All of the activity and the parking activity abuts the commercial area of Black Rock Turnpike and is faced in that direction. The landscaped areas and conservation easement provide buffers to the nearby residential uses to the west and to the northwest. There's also additional plantings that are being provided along the perimeter to provide buffers to the residential properties. And the architectural elements you heard about previously in the materials that you touched, the subject property will blend with the residential uses in the neighborhood. So in addition to studying the neighborhood and the proposed development orientation to the neighborhood, I also performed a paired sales analysis. And this is really focusing on the residential properties. I don't anticipate any impact at all for the commercial properties. I'm focusing on, well, what is the impact of the residential properties next to it, to the south, across the street, and over on Pansy Road. And in a paired sales analysis, what the appraiser tries to do and what I do is I find a situation that already exists that is comparable to what is proposed here. So I looked at assisted living facilities, I looked at existing nursing homes, and I looked at those properties that are located in residential neighborhoods and in similar communities and where the homes are similar to the homes that abut this facility. I found 3 sets of pairs. I prepared, and you'll see in the addenda, the location map for paired sales 1, but I prepared this chart, blow up for you just so you could see it. Paired sale 1 abuts assisted living facility in Norwalk, which is Maplewood at Strawberry Hill. This is the facility. It's a 54,000 square foot facility. It has 84 units. It's located on Strawberry Hill Avenue. And you can see this property that's sold is right next to the community. I paired this with another property that's sold that was similar, made adjustments to those 2 sets of pairs, as well as two other pairs that I looked at for another facility in Norwalk and a facility in Trumbull. The paired sales study found no negative impact on property values due to their proximity to senior care communities. So in conclusion, it's my opinion that the proposed assisted living community will have no negative impact on the market value of neighboring properties and will not change the character of the subject neighborhood.
Excuse me, you're comparing, that's 63 Strawberry Hill Avenue?
Yes,
And you're comparing that house to 29 Strawberry Hill Avenue?
I am, yes.
How are you comparing it?
63 abuts the assisted living facility.
Yeah.
29 is also along Strawberry Hill Avenue, has the same influence, except for it does not abut a senior living facility.
Yeah, but 63 Strawberry Hill Avenue has central air conditioning, a 2-car garage, a deck, a patio, and a shed, and 29 doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have a garage, and only has a porch. So I'm trying to say, how are you comparing these 2 houses? One's 1,942 square feet, the other one's 1,537 square feet. So I'm trying to see how these 2 houses compare to each other.
Good question. In a paired sales analysis, what I try to do is find 2 properties that are as similar as possible with regard to every physical attribute except for its location proximate, in this instance, to a senior care facility. All of the items that you mentioned are adjusted for, similar to what you would see in an appraisal report, where you're comparing 3 comparable homes to your home when you get financing, and there are differences in bathrooms or differences in square footage, and those items are adjusted for. So I'm adjusting one property to the other, accounting for all the differences and saying, okay, what is that property going to sell for? If it were located, what would the property proximate to the assisted living facility sell for if it were not proximate to the assisted living facility? And there really was no difference. Any difference in location proximate to that facility would fall out as some type of large adjustment. And in these cases, for these pairs, there was no adjustment necessary.
See, the problem I have with this is, to me, it just, I don't find that really reliable, because we could have took it from 20 different houses and find the one that pretty much matches up to it. That's how I could see it, you know?
Well, I understand you. It is a judgment. Appraisal is judgment. As when you get your homes appraised, that's a judgment. But that's not the way that is performed. What we look for is properties that are most similar to the subject, and then we make
The way I
adjustments
see
to
this
it.
is, okay, if that building's not there, how much is 63 Strawberry Hill Avenue? How much is that house worth? And how much is it worth with the building there? I mean, if I have a house next door to that building rather than a 50,000 square foot building, I have to assume, just sitting here, that it's gotta be worth more money.
And that's exactly what we're looking at in the paired, and I would say that it's not. I mean,
Okay.
for 2 reasons. One, I looked at the before and after of the subject neighborhood, and I don't think the homes that are located around the subject neighborhood will suffer at all in value
So, okay.
after the proposed development
Okay.
is constructed.
So let me ask you this then. Go into your map, you cut out, I don't want to say cut out, 4 homes. And if we go from Black Rock Turnpike, we have home number 1, home number 2, home number 3, home number 4, okay? Out inside the yellow line. The first house outside the yellow line, you really tell me that without a house next door to it, with this building next door, it's going to be worth the same exact value?
Yes,
With
that's what I'm
an
telling you.
18-foot driveway right there going into commercial property?
Yes, these homes are located proximate to commercial uses already. They're located near a busy intersection already. The use that's being put there is not a atypical use. It's something that you would typically find in this type of location, transitioning from a commercial neighborhood to a residential neighborhood. If it's not this use, it's a multifamily apartment use that's typically found in these locations. So I don't think a buyer would pay less for the property after this is constructed.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, this Maplewood at Strawberry Hill, would you know what the underlying zone of that is? Is it a residential zone? Again, I'm not familiar with Norwalk zoning. Is it a residential zone? Is there something special about it?
I'm not certain what the zoning is.
Okay. And then prior to it being renovated as assisted living, it was an elementary school.
It was, correct.
So it was some sort of an institutional use before and after, so.
And this wasn't a before and after. I looked at the property that it sold after it was already converted. So I said, all right, I looked at the sale price that was paid, being located after, as it exists in this picture.
Okay. Okay, I just, maybe this property near it, you know, was proximate to a institution before and after, but you're looking at the sales after it was constructed and comparing it to that other property that Commissioner Alessi referenced down the street.
That's correct. Just looking to see if I have the zoning here. No, I don't.
Right, 'cause this particular is a residential zone. Again, our regulations allow for an exception use for assisted living facilities in a zone, but the underlying zone here is residential.
Yes, and if I had to guess, I would say because it was a school and it's in a residential neighborhood, that it was likely residential, because that's usually where schools are. But I can't say for
Right.
certain, but there are...
Strawberry Hill has some variety of...
It does. It has some
uses on
commercial,
in
some
Norwalk.
residential. You're correct.
Okay. I'll go take a look at it then. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions? Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, in light of the hour, I think we'll stop there, that we've gone over all the segments of our initial presentation. We've obviously been taking notes on questions and clarifications, and I will make sure that the team submits everything that we would have to say on December 13th in writing in advance, so you staff
Appreciate that
can
very much,
review it.
very much. We do, I did think of another question for the traffic engineer, and I apologize, but I'd like to call him back up for a moment. Thanks very much.
Sure.
So what occurred to me was that the Angus Steakhouse was either there or was empty, and during renovations, when you did the traffic counts on Stilson Road, and whether the little pub was open and occupied and in business when you did your traffic counts. Do you know the answer to that?
I know the Little Pub opened late August, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere before Labor Day.
Right, of 2016?
Yes. And when we originally did the data collection, that was back in May of 2015.
Right, and then again in March of 2016?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, late March.
So, I don't know if you know the area at all, but it might not surprise you to learn that the Angus Steakhouse didn't really do so well.
It was empty, from what I recall.
And I don't know when it stopped and when they, started all the actually did all the renovations and everything. I can tell you that I've tried to eat with my family at the Little Pub on 3 different occasions, and on all 3 occasions, it was standing room only in the bar, and it was an hour wait, and I moved on. So I'm wondering how the Little Pub might impact your analysis now that it's really fully up and running, being right next to the property and on this road.
It shouldn't impact the morning because the Little Pub is not open until 11 a.m.
good point.
For the evening, especially now if we're looking at a shift change around 3 o'clock, that's sort of the latter part of lunch, I would assume, so there might be a little bit of a dip. I did take a look at the popular, whenever you search a venue on Google, they give you popular times or
They do
Yelp
now.
or something along those lines. And
Your percentage chances of actually getting a table.
yes, exactly. And it definitely shows a peak from about 6 to 7, and it's kind of consistent if you go Monday through Friday. I was kind of perusing through it. So if we're looking at a PM peak, early afternoon of around, 2 to 4 for a 3-hour shift change, I don't know if that would more or less be impacted too much by the Little Pub because of the fact that it's that intermediate period between lunch and dinner.
Yeah. I think, though, the interest would be, you would normally look at the peak hour not in relation to the shift change, which we talked about earlier, and I appreciate you now focused on that because that's what I was asking about previously. But in the typical analysis, you would look at the peak hour from 5:30 to 6:30, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, something like that, right?
Yes.
So my concern is that as we were talking about the acceptable levels of service at these intersections, we're starting at Ds. I think there was an E in there. We're not great. The Economic Development Commission considers the intersection to be suboptimal. The ITE considers the intersection to be not optimal. I'm interested to see your authority from the Connecticut Department of Transportation to say that D is acceptable. But if we factor in the Little Pub now into the analysis, do we push the numbers that much further out and delays that much longer, such that we get into, on even a technical level, an unacceptable level of service?
It's a difficult question because if we were just talking about evaluating the impact of the development, and now the impact of the development is greatest felt during shift change hours, the impact of the Little Pub at their peak times would be a separate study in itself because you're focusing on that development,
Yeah.
not looking at this one that we're here about.
Well, the traffic counts that we got don't take into account whatever impact the Little Pub might bring to the situation, and that's really, if any, right, fair enough. I mean, you don't know, we don't know.
Fair enough, yes,
yeah.
I agree.
And in order to get that, in order to understand the impact, what would we need to do? Put down the road, bubbles and actually go do car counts? Is that how we would need to assess the impact, or is there some other way that we could do it?
Well, I think you would need to do that because of the fact that that would give you just your general variation. The general purpose of just doing any tube count for an overall 7-day period is that you get a full 24-hour perspective of flows up and down the roadway. So you can see when the congestion's occurring, and that'll give you a little bit more of a perspective in terms of what's going on.
Right. Okay. Excellent. I opened the door here. Does
I just
anybody
want to
have
ask you a
any-
question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
You made an excellent point regarding the sightlines earlier. I just was checking with staff. It doesn't appear that our town engineer, Ms. Pooley, actually looked at the sightlines in this case, but she will, and so I just wanted it for the record that hopefully we can get a memo from her or an email that lets us know that she reviewed this issue of the multiple things you noticed in discovery on this.
Yeah.
See what how that impacts sightlines?
No, that's a good point. We usually have something like that in the file, and we don't in this one, so thank you. Okay? No other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. So, we're all set, Mr. Hollister? Very good. Thank you very much. So, we now move to the public comment portion of the public hearing. We have about 15 minutes, so we'll get started. We'll finish, we'll, as many people can, say their piece before 11 o'clock, and then I'm anticipating, given the number of people that are here, we're not going to finish tonight, and we will continue the public hearing on December 13th. I again would remind everyone that you can submit your comments in writing by email, and we read every word, and you don't have to come back and talk in person. Yes, sir. Just state your name and
Mark
address.
Carroll, Fairfield, Connecticut. I have a few concerns. One would be, I don't see any place where you pile snow in there at all. I think one of you guys brought up the fact that, what do you do with 2 feet of snow? And that was more for emergency purposes, and I guess they addressed that. But what do you do with the snow in there? There's no, and the buffer zone, if anybody wants to address that, because I do that for a living. I'm a landscape mason, so I know quite a bit about where do you put the snow, where does it go. My other concern is basically during the construction. I mean, there's going to be great disturbance on that road during the construction period. It's going to upset that area tremendous. Our roads are already congested. Stilson Road, Congress Street, every secret road in this town has been found to get around to outside of town. Another point is Trumbull and Wilton does not have our population. What's Trumbull's population? 10,000, or 20,000, and Wilton's 10,000 to our 60+ thousand. It's just our roads are congested there. I think that it's just not a good spot at this point to develop. I think there's other buildings in this town that can be redeveloped for the same use, and I just don't think that's a good spot. But I'll let.
Thank you for your comments. I see we have a line developing.
Hi, how are you? State Senator Tony Huang, live on 80 Martingale Lane. I'm here with the state delegation of Representative Brenda Kupchak and Laura Devlin. I'm going to be quick. I want to recognize all the people in the neighborhood that are here, so I'm going to be very brief. But I also want to thank the commission for all the hours you put in. Saying that, there are 3 particular issues that I have related to this project, and it is a significant point of concern. I think the first issue is in the arena of public safety. We are looking at pedestrian safety from the standpoint of children leaving Fairfield Woods that are walking through the neighborhood. And also, I think what has been made very clearly by the members of this commission is the fact that in living around the community, you know, driving into A&S or trying to come off of Judd Street to make a left-hand turn and watching the congestion of the streets and the cars and the speed of the traffic, there's a real concern in regards to public safety and pedestrian safety, car traffic. The second part that I would say is, in the 3 previous projects of living units that's addressed here, we have one behind Carlton, we have the other one relative to Stratfield Road, and then Mill Hill Terrace. What we're looking at this as a second point of concern is this is an unprecedented encroachment on private property. And it's a real concern that is a precedent that we're setting in zoning issues that may have significant and consequential impact in our community. I would urge the commission to consider that. I think the third issue is from a standpoint of transparency and consistency of information. And I applaud in sitting here listening to the commission and asking the questions of the proponent of this proposal and getting some clarification and getting a better understanding that, you know, we do live in this town, and what's being proposed has to be consistent with the realities of what we have to endure. And I think that's where you're seeing the neighborhood, not only within the surrounding neighborhood, but throughout the whole town that are coming out to address the concern of this issue. I think the other thing that I wanted to share is, as a former state representative representing that area of Trumbull in which their previous property, and I think I overheard where it was a heavily residential area. I've walked that district. The reality is, on the other side of the Merritt Parkway, it is predominantly commercial. You have the Kennedy Center. You have Lindeman Drive right on the other side. The reality is there were no significant residential impact on where that location is. And I found that statement to be cavalier to say that it's a residential neighborhood. And so I would urge that when we look at the data or the information that's translated here, that it is valid and applicable to our community. So I would be brief in simply saying that this is a project that raises a lot of concern for me, but also raises a lot of concern for public safety and the application of our community. So I'd be happy to answer any particular questions, and I want to be brief. And I want to still say again, I want to acknowledge all the people that are spending their evenings, along with all of you as well, to make sure that their voice gets heard. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. No, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks
we're good?
very much
No
for your
questions?
comments.
Hello, my name is Nora Coulter. I'm a resident in that area on Mayfair Road. I'm also a nurse practitioner, so I will speak from a medical standpoint of view. This facility will be taking care of patients with all stages of Alzheimer's, as it states there, including the late, the 6th and the 7th stage. And while the early stages of Alzheimer's are wandering, physical, verbal aggression, the late stage involves a lot of comorbidities and a lot of care and medical treatment, including aspiration pneumonia, which will necessitate trips to the hospital more often than not, frequent urinary tract infections, falls every time the person would fall, especially if they are on blood thinners, and they do have a lot of comorbidities. There would be ambulance, first responders, and the person will be rushed to the hospital, whether that it is 3 a.m., 5 a.m., because they would need to have a CT scan to see if there's any intracranial bleeding or any kind of fall. In the later stage, those people cannot swallow, so a lot of them have feeding tubes, and they're very confused. They pull them out, and that necessitates a trip to emergency room and operating room to reinstall that feeding tube, and that goes on and goes on. I've seen a lot of these issues in the hospital. 10 to 20% of these patients will develop seizures. That's another whole lot of set of issues. You will have decubiti ulcers because they're bedridden. You will have treatment, debridement. You will have physical therapy coming to the facility separately from the staff. You will have occupational therapy, visiting nurses, psychiatrists, the labs from these patients. The lab will come to that facility. You're looking way more at 28 visits a day. You're looking at all the relatives, especially when something happened. The relatives will be there to make some, decisions, because obviously these people, they cannot make decisions for themselves. You look at heavily family involvement and presence in this facility, and therefore I'm kind of wondering about the 28 people on staff. As you know, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, the shift staff change might have a lot more people that do not belong to that facility, but they yet will come and go permanently. So I was wondering if that was taken into consideration. Also, you're looking at issues of medical waste management. That's a whole entire issue, especially with the water supply, things going into the water, residential grounds. You're looking at hazardous waste management. A lot of these people are a lot of medications, and they cannot sometimes handle them. Some of them try to throw them in the sink, not to take them, to throw them in the toilet. You have to account for that too, which we normally ourselves wouldn't do, I hope, in the residential neighborhood. So it's it's a host of issues that was not addressed when they looked at the traffic. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity. My name is Carol Guernsey, and I live at 241 Brookside Drive. I live in this neighborhood, and this project very much could affect the way my family lives. On Brookside Drive, I live in, I think, a really unique place because 2 doors down from me is a family hobby farm, which is a pretty special thing, and then 2 blocks east of me is Black Rock Turnpike. So just recently I ran out of basil and hopped on my bike, and I was at Trader Joe's in like 4 minutes. That being said, that trip is treacherous and very fearful for the addition of any additional traffic, given what I understand is happening in terms of the surveying that's being done through the study. There was, I think, a grant of $375,000 to study this major state highway that's essentially cutting through my neighborhood. So this really concerns me. And in addition to that, I'm very interested in just preserving the character of my neighborhood, and I don't see this particular location as being, as it was described, as a transitional neighborhood. I see it very much as being residential up to the corner of the businesses as they exist. So that's very hard for me to understand. I just hope you'll take into consideration this integrity and the character of the neighborhood, which I think would change very much with a facility like this, including the architecture which they presented, which I think does not in any way fit into the neighborhood, despite the descriptions that they've provided. That's my opinion, so thank you for that.
Thank you for your comments. We can, I think, take one more.
Hi, my name is Anne Marie Petrie, and I live at 515 Stilson Road. So I live diagonally across from where this facility would be. So obviously that is of great concern to me that this would go in. I live in the yellow farmhouse that's set back from the road. So I'm set back from the road a little bit, but I sit up on a hill. So from my windows, we will see this entire development. I have 2 kids, and when we bought this house, we bought because we're in a neighborhood. And we believe that even though we're on Stilson Road with all the efficiencies that Stilson Road gives, we still believe that we were living in a residential neighborhood, you know. I would never have bought the home that I'm in now if that was across the street from me. You know, then I would have definitely put my money somewhere else in Fairfield. So it's obviously, even in my voice you can tell, it's very upsetting that it would even be considered to you know, by this group of developers, that it would be okay to take 4 houses, 4 residential homes that are there now, and think that it's okay to put this in with 64 units or 62 units, plus whatever additional members that can come and live within the facility with them. I am concerned that if it goes in, what that does to the value of my property. I find it hard to, I live in a beautiful old farmhouse from 1894. We've spent a lot of money in there to repair and keep up with the home. And I find it hard to believe that the value of my home would not go down with this across the street. When now we have the little pub, so there is a lot more traffic that was there. We've lived there 5 years now. But this facility, putting that in, to me, that would just be detrimental to the value of my home. And I definitely don't want to see that happen for my own personal, obviously, financial situation, but also just for the entire neighborhood. There is, you know, another part of why we bought our home is because we do have 2 children. We walk to Osborne Hill School every day, and my son is going to be going into 6th grade, and he would be walking to Fairfield Woods. The fact that these conveniences are there, I think, is fantastic, and I get to see my neighbors, and I get to take my kids to and from school. I don't feel comfortable having this development and having my 11-year-old walk back and forth past it. He has ADHD, and it's concerning for me on any level, but the fact that then you add that much more traffic to this area, it is definitely a frightening thought to me. My other concern, obviously, as I'm sure that this whole room is going to tell you, is the traffic. I did have some concerns about the traffic report that was done. It was done in, as they said, in 2015, but if I recall correctly, it was put up right before Memorial Day weekend, and then shortly after that, school got out. So when the study was done, it was done in a time which wasn't also prime time. So I'm not exactly sure how long the traffic study stayed up for, but I think that that should be something that we should look further into to actually get real accounts of what those numbers are, because being in that home, I know in the summertime, a lot of people go away. There is not the same amount of traffic that travels that road as there is during, you know, the time when school is there. I'm going to let some other people say something, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. So, we have reached our curfew. I apologize for all of you who did not get a chance to speak tonight, but this is our process. Hopefully it was helpful to participate and hear the applicant's presentation. We'll continue this hearing until December 13th.